Welcome to The Impossible, where we empower others to face the impossible, inspire them to be impossible, and motivate them to do the impossible. And you guys know we read that mission statement at the beginning of every single episode to try to set the tone for what we're doing, not just on the podcast, but in our daily lives, in our training, in our performance, in our family life, and everything we're enveloped in. And today we are extremely excited and honored to bring a guest that we've been excited for weeks to have on now, a guest who perfectly embodies that mission statement, that mindset, and has an incredible story of how he got to where he is today, and more than that, how he lives his daily life and his approach for everything he's chasing. He's an amazing athlete, both in the world of strength and performance as a bodybuilder. He has dedicated his life to becoming an incredible coach for athletes at all levels in multiple disciplines. And beyond all of that, he's an incredibly humble, giving, honest, and strong-willed human being that we're excited to learn from the lessons he's faced in his life and what he's chasing going forward in every discipline he chases. So with that, we're excited to bring Jaden Lacaria onto the show.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for being here, man. So I always like to dive back a little bit into kind of where you started, how you got to where you are today. And I know you actually grew up, at least part of your life, in this area, correct?
Yeah.
You went to PHS high school?
High school there, yeah.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. What was it like growing up in, were you in Parkersburg or Southeast Ohio?
Parkersburg.
Parkersburg? Yeah. Were you born and raised there?
Yeah, I was born in Parkersburg. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. What was life in Parkersburg like?
You know how it is in this area.
Not a lot going on.
Yeah, not a whole lot going on. Started playing sports at a really young age, so my life was always like centered around sports. Football, and wrestling.
You got into weightlifting at a pretty young age too.
Yeah,
right?
I started training pretty serious around 11 years old.
Okay.
That's when I was first kind of in the position where mentally I wanted to take it serious and see where it could take me, because I knew it would help me in football. I knew it would help me in wrestling. And I wanted to be the best athlete I could be. So, I started doing that. And honestly, bodybuilding is what got me into that. I saw the Flex magazines with, Ronnie Coleman, Jay Cutler, all those guys on it. So I wanted to, look like that eventually and see what was, possible. So that kind of was the start of it all.
Yeah. Did you have specific mentors that took you in that direction? Or was it just you just got this urge from out of nowhere at that young of an age?
So I've always been a super big fan of professional wrestling.
Okay.
So I used to love Batista and Bobby Lashley, and I was like, I don't look like that,
Yeah.
So that had a huge influence on me. And then my brother's father, he had me definitely involved in bodybuilding heavily at the age of 11, because he was training. I'd go downstairs and see him training in the basement and stuff like that all the time. So he had an impact for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So you start training at a young age at 11, and that's pretty young. That's awesome. You were able to get in at that point and get so much experience under your belt.
Yeah.
At that age, because I always look back. I didn't even start training till I was, I would have been 21, 22, somewhere around there.
Mm-hmm.
I never touched a weight in my life before that.
Yeah.
And so I always think man, if I could have gone back and gotten an extra, even 5 years of experience under my belt, it's what could I have learned then? But I mean, at the end of the day, I'm just thankful I got into it when I did, because it's totally changed my life.
100%.
I feel like so many people who get into it at this level, it's just a life-changing thing.
Yeah.
What do you think it is about? There's so many disciplines of weightlifting. What do you think it is about it that can have that kind of life-altering impact on people?
I think for a lot of people, it makes them believe in themselves, because me as a coach, for example, I get people from all different levels and all different walks of life. So someone will come to me who, let's say they've never really been in the gym seriously, but they have certain goals they want to hit. Let's say it's just to bench 225, or let's say it's to just improve their body composition. And then we do that, and they're like, wow, I didn't think I could surpass that level. And then they do that, and they're just all in. You know what I mean? And it's cool to see that and to be a part of that, because it makes someone truly believe in themselves. And then I get athletes who, want to take it serious and have been trying to. They didn't have the guidance. So then I just kind of give them the guidance and we just put a plan together and we execute, you know, every single week. And you can go back and see progress just from like 6 months to a year, and they're literally unrecognizable. So them seeing that is like a huge awakening for themselves, where it's like, I can really do what I want to do if I put the effort into it. Like, it's all possible.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
I agree with you fully, because I think it's that, like, it's like a physical window into your own potential.
Yeah.
And when you build that potential physically, it starts to bleed over, I think, in every case into, you know, your potential from a mindset perspective, or like, you know, emotionally or spiritually as well.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can't, the great thing about lifting weights too is you can't deny it. You know, like if you go out and, like you say, hit a 225 pound bench press,
Yeah.
that's something nobody can ever take away from you.
Yeah.
Like that's something you will always know that you were capable of, or at least at one point in your life were capable of.
Yeah.
And so you know that if you can work and build toward that, you can work and build toward anything.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it can have this effect. It's so cool to see that in people. It's so cool to be able to see that in yourself as well. You know, for me, it's wild, because I don't know that I've ever even said this on the show before, but you're actually my coach, and you've been coaching me for almost a year now, actually. Yeah, it was about a year ago we got together. And what's wild is, like you say, you know, it took me probably 3 years on my own to go from a 300 pound squat to a 400 pound squat.
Yeah.
And so much of that, which I just hit for the first time actually in last April's meet. So it's been less than a year ago now.
Yeah.
And that was even in wraps. It wasn't even raw.
Yeah.
And so it took me probably 3 years to make that kind of ground coverage. And a lot of that was due to the people at Monsters, just their wealth of knowledge and experience and belief in people. I would have never made it there without them. But then now in like 9 months, you know, I go from April to December and hit 462. And now this year, at some point, we're going to hit 500 on squat.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think that's a huge testament to where just having that guidance of a good coach who knows what they're doing, and also somebody, and we'll dive definitely more into this later, but one of the things I appreciate the most about you as a coach is you never want to limit me as an athlete. Like, you're always there to help me hit the goals that I want to hit. And you're not necessarily trying to come up with goals of your own to impose upon me.
Yeah.
Like, you want to help me chase whatever it is I want to chase, in the best way, you know, possible.
Yeah. And that's what I tell people. I'm like, look, like, your goals are mine. Like, whatever you want to do, it's what I'm going to help you do. I'm like, now if you ask for my advice or my opinion on something, I'm going to give you the honest answer and like the honest truth. Like, if I feel like something's super conflicting, or it's going to like set you back as an athlete from a goal you want to do, then I'll tell you, like, hey, like, if I was in your shoes, or if you want this to happen in this time frame, this is what we should do. And we'll try to navigate that process. But I'll never be like, hey, you should do this because I want this and I think this. It's like, hey, you want to, you know, run this marathon or do this or do that, you know, let's do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we'll just put together a plan to make the other stuff happen.
Yeah, because that's like, I think that a great example of that is like last summer, I came to you like a month out from the August meet. Maybe it was like 6 weeks out from the August meet. I was like, hey, I think I want to jump in this August meet, but I'm also marathon training, so I can only I can only train 1 day a week.
Yeah.
And you never had any push. You were just like, all right, cool. You know, we'll write a program that way. And like, you understood obviously that wasn't optimal for powerlifting performance.
No. It's tough because like, with like how like the fibers work, like you have like type 2A fibers, type 2B fibers, or type 2X. So it's like the way like fiber shift happens, like when you're training endurance or like training strength training or peaking for a meet or even like a track meet or something, like there's so much that goes on with the body. So like trying to like balance those two like together was kind of like, for me mentally as a coach, I was like, okay, how do I do this and like make sure you're still able to get stronger at the same time, you know, and you of course manage fatigue too.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what was crazy to me is like, even just training 1 day a week throughout that very short prep, I gained like crazy amounts of strength that I would have never known how to tackle that without like your insight and experience into that. And I still set, I think, a raw like almost 40 pound PR on that.
Yeah.
I think I was 386 before, and I hit 425 in that comp. And so that really just opened my eyes to like, wow, what a incredibly valuable asset you were to have on my own training, because it's like I get access to this whole wealth of knowledge and experience that I would have just been making it up entirely on my own. Because, I've definitely learned a lot over the last 7 years, but it's it's basically nothing. There's days I walk into Monsters and I'll have a training session and I'll learn so much in one session that's like I feel like I know nothing about training at all. But that's what I love. I love to be in those kind of environments, and so it's been an honor to learn from you in that way. So like taking it back to how you kind of so you started training weights at a very young age to fuel athletic performance in a lot of sports. What ended up driving you into wanting to go into more of like a powerlifting, bodybuilding direction as opposed to like pursuing wrestling or football professionally or things like that?
Yeah, so for me, like I told myself from day one, I was like, all right, my two goals are either to go to the NFL or become a professional bodybuilder. Like those were, it was never like plan A, plan B. It was more like, this is kind of like both are plan A.
Yeah.
So it's like, make these things happen. So, but obviously it was conflicting. Like you can't do both. So, it came to a point for me where like after high school, like my recruiting wasn't going super great for football at the level that I wanted to be at. So I kind of had to make a decision like, okay, well, what do I do? Like what's the smart thing to do? Especially me as a student, because I'm from my professional education across the board, I've always been able to excel at that really easily. So I went to college, I went to West Virginia University for part of my undergrad. And I went there and I was like, okay, well, I might walk on, play football, talk to some of the staff there. And like, there really wasn't an opportunity for me to do that, just based off like their roster and how things were looking at the time. So I was like, okay, well, I'll just keep powerlifting and keep training, focusing on my education. And throughout that process, when I was just training and stuff, I just kept getting better and better and better and better. And I was like, well, let me do a meet. So I remember, ended up doing a meet. And then...
And when was that you did your first meet?
It was in February of 2018.
Okay. So like 7 years ago now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like... that was actually, I got into lifting in January of 2018. So that was really? Like right when I started lifting.
Oh, sweet. Yeah. So yeah, I got into my first meet then, bombed out the meet.
Oh,
but yes, aside from that, it was a really good experience. Had a good time. And went on to, do another meet that December that year as well. Mm-hmm. So I did a couple meets off the rip that, taught me a lot, but I knew also I didn't have a pro level physique in bodybuilding. Mm-hmm. Takes time, bodybuilding's a super patient sport. So in that process, I was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna keep training. I'm going to keep, doing what I can do, focus on school. And then the program I was in at West Virginia, it was good, but it's not, I know I could do more. So I transferred to Ohio State, and then I got into their, one of the nutrition programs, but I decided to switch into physical activity and coaching specialization, which was my undergraduate program. Went to school there for that. That was like beginning of 2019. I got to Columbus, and then had to try out at West Side Barbell. So I was still powerlifting at the time, and I was like, okay, hey, like, I want to do this while in school. It's a good opportunity to train, learn, and people who are smarter and better than me. And then once I got the West Side Barbell, it just like, that's where for the first time I could see that I could become one of the best in the world. Yeah. Like it really dawned on me. I was like, man, these guys, they're older than me. They've been lifting longer than me, but I'm like, I'm literally every single day I'm in here training with them. I'm beating them or I'm right in their heels.
Yeah. So that's like one of the most iconic places. Like there's not a powerlifter you talk to that's like even semi-serious in the sport that doesn't know the name West Side.
Yeah.
Everybody in the world knows the name West Side.
Yeah.
And especially what Louis built there. So that had to be, what was that experience like, walking in there for the first time, and then not only that, but like realizing you could hold your own with that kind of level of competition. For me, it was I remember I got invited to come and train on a Wednesday morning, and they just told me bring my best bench with me. See you in the morning, 7 a.m. It's okay, cool. So I just remember like my classes I had like 18 credit hours that semester, so I was on a full load. That's not a light class load. Yeah.
Just I was up to studying like every night, and always up super late. So I remember going to bed early, got up, drove to the gym, and just hopped in and started training with them, and Lily just would watch me and just see like what I was doing, ask me questions, and got to know me pretty well. And he told me, he's like, hey, I want you to come back, come back on Friday, come train, and we'll put you through a dynamic lower session, and that session like about broke me in half. Like I
would imagine.
I mean, Louis just was absolutely putting me through chaos, and he just, he told me, he's like, hey, like, I love your work ethic, like you're already really strong, you have a ton of potential, like I want you to keep coming around. If you need anything at all, let me know. And at that time, this is funny because during that time I was in an English course at Ohio State, and it conflicted with me being at West Side. There was no way I could change my schedule either. So I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. So I literally showed up to that class every single time late for that whole semester. Yeah. But I still finished the class with I think it was like a C+, which is like the worst grade I probably had in undergraduate. Yeah. But I mean, it was like, hey, like I'm at West Side Barbell. I'm not going to.
Yeah. And that just speaks to like priorities. And I know I talk to you about this all the time. Like I try to always make sure like my daily actions are aligned with my priorities as much as humanly possible. And it's like, I always try to remind myself, like, these priorities don't have to match society standards. They don't have to please somebody else. They've got to be what I live for. Mm-hmm. And, sometimes you got to do things like that where, it's not like you're just sleeping in and you can't wake up and you don't care about school, but like you've got a vision and a dream for what you're going to create in life. And training at West Side is going to be a little more impactful for that vision.
And you can tell anyone, like the normal person, that you weren't in class because you're at the gym or whatever, they're going to think you're insane. But I'm like, no, like if I want to go and accomplish what I want to accomplish, like I have to do what I got to do. And like at the time being, that was my best case scenario, is to be a little bit late, but it still allowed me to train, with everyone in the morning crew, Louis Simmons, Chuck Vogelpol, and all the guys who've been there for years on end. And for me, I was like, I wouldn't trade that for anything, so I was like, if I want to be the best I can be at this sport, I need to be there and learn. And, the connections I made there were priceless, Mm-hmm. I just remember like meeting, so many members of the, strength staff at Ohio State and other Division I programs that would come in those doors, and just other people in the fitness industry in general. So getting to meet those people and just build like good friendships was awesome. And a lot of those people I still talk to all the time, like from all those years ago, Yeah. So like for me, looking back, it was like, those were days like I always cherish, Louis obviously passed away, and, a lot of that gym's done, so it's no longer a thing. It's just
I didn't know
just a museum now. So
I didn't even know that.
Whoa. Yeah,
I thought somebody had like taken over and tried to rebrand it a little bit and keep.
Yeah, there's like a warehouse like they have where it's just like some of the equipment, and they'll host like seminars and different like events you can attend and stuff. But yeah, like actual like the gym is not like there's not crews in there anymore training and stuff anymore. Wow. Which I mean, like me looking back, like without Louis, like it's not like even when he would not be there because he'd be at the hospital or he was sick or something happened, like people wouldn't train hard, because when he's in there, like it's either you give it everything you got or you're getting kicked out. Yeah, there was no in between. So it's like they didn't want to let him down, and they, even if they hated him or loved him, there's a mutual respect thing where it's like, hey, like I got to perform, I got to meet the standard. Yeah,
he was such an iconic human that I don't think it could ever exist in the same way that it was without him. And it's fascinating to think about that like one person could have that much influence over an entire culture of a space. Like having met him and trained with him and learned from him, what do you think were some of the things about him that kind of commanded that sort of atmosphere from the people around him?
I mean, when you look at the board at West Side, you see everyone's name on there who broke an all-time world record or broke a record at the gym at least. And it's like, that's the standard. Those are people who came before you. Mm-hmm. Or there's guys who are still there or women who are still there. And that's the expectation. So the proof is there. And the knowledge Lily has is there. And anyone who walks in those doors knows, okay, if I want to get better, there's no better place I can be at right now. He's going to bring the best out of me, and I'm going to get better if I stay here. So I think all those things just being the obvious, if you're a lifter and you walk into that, it's like, okay, well, if I want to accomplish my goals and hit these numbers, then I need to do what needs to be done. And I think Louis too, he just brings a level of intensity that most people aren't used to. at least when looking back. And that also just kind of, I think, made people just get fired up and like tap into that next level of being like, hey, like, let's do this,
For sure. I'm always fascinated with those kind of people and that kind of situation, because it's like, what from like a mindset perspective is going on to kind of drive and fuel this?
Yeah.
Because that's the thing I've always been most obsessed with, is like, how can you leverage a powerful mindset to drive, performance in every area of life?
I mean, the thing with Louis too, it's like nothing else mattered besides the gym and those numbers. Like, I mean, he told me, I mean, people used to always give me a hard time because they're like, man, you're Louis' favorite. Like, Louis loves you. And I just would laugh, and Louis said, he's like, if you're strong, I love you. If you're weak, I hate you. He's like, there's no in between. I was like,
put that on a t-shirt.
I was like, okay. I'm like, that's fair. I'm like, I guess that's true. So,
I mean, you can say whatever you want about him, but you can't take the fact that he was a man who knew what he loved.
Yeah.
And he pursued it with every fiber of his being.
Yeah.
I don't think you can ever fault somebody for that.
No. Yeah. It was all or nothing. He had tattooed on the palms of his hands. It said, work harder.
Really?
And he wore them off. He said, my goal was to get the tattoos worn off from me working so hard. And
I never knew that.
Yeah, they're worn off. Yeah.
That's so like, just one of his life goals could be like, when they put me in a grave, you won't see those tattoos anymore.
Yeah.
Because he's worked that hard.
That was his goal. Yeah, wear them off. And they definitely wore off.
That's wild, man. Wow. Yeah. That's awesome. So going into a place like West Side, because you used to train back at the Y with like Clayton and Tab and those guys back in the day,
that's
right?
when I was like, I started going to Y when I was probably like 13 or so.
Really?
So, yeah, it's been a long time, since I've known those guys.
Yeah. I just remember like Clayton, before I'd ever met you or anything about you, Clayton, it was like right when I'd first gotten to really know Clayton and gotten close with him, he was immediately telling me about you. He's like, he's like, there's this kid, man. He's like, he was a teenager that came in and just like started out lifting all of us. Like, and how he's up in Columbus training with West Side. And he just always had the very highest view of you and everything you're chasing, everything you're doing in life. And so it kind of like really opened my mind up to like, that's so awesome that somebody from, the Mid-Ohio Valley could go out and chase and pursue and become that level of an athlete. And that just always blew me away. And then he'd show me some of the like training videos from back in the day. I think when you first hit like 500 pound squat and like you hit 600 pounds down here, right? Initially.
Yeah, I hit like a senior in high school.
Yeah. Jesus. And how much did you weigh at the time?
I was like 193 around there.
My God. That's wild. And it was at West Side, right, that you hit an unofficial world record in squat?
I did.
Was it like 8?
When I was at West Side,
something?
I was still lifting in multiply.
Okay.
But I finished top 10 in the world there my first year in multiply. And then after I left there, so I decided to leave essentially because I wanted to lift raw.
Okay.
Just because I knew like raw obviously is like the most popular division in powerlifting. It is what it is, and that's where I know what the competition's at. That's where I wanted to be at, especially with like things wanting to be more productive towards bodybuilding. I know I need to lift raw, so I went to Lexington Extreme to do a lot more of my powerlifting. And then I just went to some of the bodybuilding gyms and stuff locally in Columbus, and I still kept powerlifting. After I left West Side, I hit under a year. I hit an 865 raw squat.
Is that video that's on your Instagram?
Yeah,
dude. Yeah. I cannot tell you how many times I've watched that video.
Yeah,
like the only video I've probably watched more than that was Eddie Hall's 500 kilo deadlift, and the reason is because I don't want this to sound creepy how many times I've watched this, but the reason I love that video so much is because when you watch it, you come all the way down, and then you start to come up a little bit, and you like pause.
Yeah, and
it's like, to me, it's like, I don't know if this was what was going through your mind at that moment, but it almost looks like your body wanted to give out on you at that moment, and wanted to give up and give into the weight, and then there's just like this switch that flicks in your brain, and you just like it's like you come up, and then you almost start to sink a little bit, but then the switch just flips, and you just drive that thing up.
Yeah.
And to me, that's everything I'm obsessed with in the world. It's like, what happened in your brain that made you flip that switch and just drive your body to a whole new level?
It just, for me, that was supposed to have been done in the animal cage. So the animal cage got canceled.
Oh, was that the year of COVID?
Yeah, year of COVID.
Okay.
Yeah, so the animal cage got canceled a day before the expo. So like, I all got like...
Yeah, because we were going to go that year, actually. Yeah. That was going to be my first year at the Arnold that year. Yeah,
so it all got shut down. So we pretty much had to come up with a plan because everyone was in town already. Mm-hmm. So Pinnacle Performance, which my buddy owned at the time, was just like, hey, like, you know, we're going to host like an exhibition event here, like you, Jamal Browner, a bunch of different people.
Love Jamal.
Yeah, like everyone just came in to lift together. Yeah. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, you know, what do you guys want me to do? Like, oh, well, what time do you want to lift? I'm like, oh, well, you know, just pick some in the afternoon. Like, you know, I'll come down and squat. And my initial plan for the animal cage was supposed to be 800 for reps. So it was going to be for like as many reps I could do. Well, long story short, I was trained for the animal cage. Like 3 weeks out, I got folded in half with 750, like stapled.
Really?
Yeah, just like crushed. And I was like, this is not going well. And then took a deload, came back 2 weeks later, and literally like hit 800 like it was like an empty bar.
Wow.
And I was just like, okay, well that was great. I was like, things are looking good now. So, long story short, went to the event at Pinnacle Performance. Ended up warming up, took like 805, and I remember before I squatted, Nick Ramey squatted. Okay. And at the time he had the all-time record at 198 in reps. It was 865. Okay. I said, okay, I'm going to squat that today. Yeah. And while he was there. And
but you were going to do it raw, right?
No, I did knee wraps.
You were in wraps. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And because he had squatted too, he was much heavier than me. He was like, you know, like 220 or so at the time. I was like legit 198 pounds. And so I took 805. Everyone's like, what are you going to take? What are you going to take? And I was like, just put 865. Like, just take it. And like, I mean, I think that was a reach for sure. Like, but I mean, it went up. But like, I wasn't going to fail in front of everybody. Like literally everybody that you could think of in powerlifting was there watching me. And it was an opportunity for me to like prove to myself, like, I'm at that level and like, I can, you know, break an all-time world record. And then plus like just in front of everybody was like, hey, like, you know, this is a place you can make a name for yourself. Yeah. So, like, missing that was just not an option.
Yeah. It's one of those kind of life-defining opportunities.
Yeah.
What's going through your mind? Like, do you have anything going through your mind? Because everybody approaches this a little bit differently. When you're under that weight, time, like, stops. Yeah. Like, there's just, at least for me and a lot of people we've talked to, it's like you're not thinking about anything else besides what you have to do in that moment. Yeah. And it's like everything around you kind of fades away. So what is there anything going through your mind during those moments, or are you just purely like in execution mode and your body's going through what it's done a million times before?
Yeah, so like for me, it's just like blank space. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like there's like nothing else that kind of exists. You know, you just I just go through my cues, make sure everything's set up how it needs to be set up, really just dial myself in and then lift. That's it. You know, I think when I was younger, I used to be I'd get too amped up and almost be too aggressive with my approach. Mm-hmm. And as I've gotten older, it's like controlled aggression, because like you have to like really like focus on what you're doing. You can hurt yourself, or like you're going to miss the lift because you got opposition. So the more in tune I became with like my lifting and like with how I set up and how I approach things, the better and better I got. And it saved me energy for when I got to my top set.
Yeah. Almost sounds like this kind of stoic approach where you just let everything else around you fade out and you just kind of go totally 100% into the moment. Yeah. And just, you know, focus purely on the mechanics of what you basically just execute everything you've built up knowledge-wise and experience-wise over the years.
Yeah. No, and that's the thing. It's like, you know, going through, you know, all of like my favorite lifts, like up to this point, it's like every single one of them, like it was like they were all meaningful at their own point in time, you know. But then like you always want more, you always want more, you always want more because you know what you can do. So like even now, like any PR I hit, like for me, I'm always excited and happy, but it's like, okay, cool. Like, you know, I didn't have to get as amped up a lot of times to hit those PRs. You know what I mean? They're all just as meaningful because it was another opportunity, another day to get better.
Yeah.
But like, I think like my approach has kind of like changed as I've gotten like older and like just more like, you know, in tune with my body and like how like I can physically like approach, you know, a training session.
Yeah, I'd say that the same is definitely true for me as well. Like I've definitely changed from when I first got into lifting. It was very much angry lifting. Like there was not a lot of technique. There's not a lot of beauty to it. And it at the time it's what I needed because I was processing a lot of pent up emotion that I had not processed in a healthy way for a very, very long time. Yeah. And so that's what really got me into it and allowed me to, I was actually able to work through a lot of that stuff through lifting, you know, but then when I got to monsters and really started learning like how to lift. Yeah. I realized that like, oh, I can actually use a lot of the mental fortitude that I built through everything I'd gone through before in life to help me execute in this way where I have like, you know, I have physical disadvantages. Let me use my mental strength to make up and exceed where those physical disadvantages are. And so it's like over time, you know, the first time I deadlifted 500, that was like my life's purpose for a very long time. And then the first time I deadlifted that, I'm like screaming like nonstop. It's so, because I used to be like a screamer on deadlift. And then I realized, oh, you can actually brace and that actually helps you if you don't scream. So, you know, it's like changed over time to where it's like now I don't do that much at all. Unless I'm maybe at like the very top of a lift or something, the lift's already done at that point, but it's a much more calm approach. I'm a lot more internal now, and I actually get a lot more, it's weird. I almost go to these like mournful places when I lift now, which is a weird experience for me, but I found it's a very powerful trigger to tap into. And I know things have changed for you a little bit too, Austin, over the years, as far as like how you approach lifting.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's deadlift is very much, it's my favorite out of the three. And so I'm definitely learning to keep that emotional rage at bay, and like he said, keep the bracing on. I mean, that was my biggest one. And we even had some advice come my way when we were lifting with some others at Monsters. I was starting to let go of that bracing before I got to the top, and they were like, "Hey, you know, you need to relax a little bit, and keep that in, you know, and to you know, what's to say you can get another rep or two in,
for sure,
you know, with that energy." So it's definitely, and even with the recent events, I mean, I just did 275 for 9, and the last few I started to scream at the top, but you know, with those recent events, I think it's done nothing but show me that, like you said, getting older is something also, you know, very crucial that I've had to face along with these kind of events. And so I think as Matt kind of directed to the more stoic approach to it. And then also you said that kind of like controlled anger, I think is just, that's paramount. Yeah.
I mean, because, you know, you just learn like what's productive like towards like your actual set and what's like counterproductive, you know. Like you only have so much energy in a day, so you know, I'm big on like using every ounce you have towards like that set, towards like, you know, making sure everything goes as perfect as you possibly can, you know, can't control it to that degree. So yeah, I mean, I think like you said, you know, as we get older and as we get more experience, like the easier things become and the more in tune we become with ourselves.
Yeah. So what kept you actually powerlifting for so long? Because it sounds like from very early on you knew that like bodybuilding was your true goal and passion. What kept you powerlifting for so long while you were chasing bodybuilding? Because I know the two certainly can go hand in hand, but they are very very different styles of training for sure. And
the biggest thing is, you know, my last meet was actually it was in 2020. in November. So
Okay.
it's almost been 5 years ago.
Wow.
Granted, I was in prep for a meet in the winter of 2022. So the meet I had picked out was Ghost Clash, the first Ghost Clash actually, in 2022. And that's when I tore my quad tendons, was prepping for that. Now, prior to that, in January, in the fall of 2021, I did my first bodybuilding show. So, like, right when I was finishing undergrad at Ohio State, I started competing in bodybuilding. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, let's give this a go and see what happens. So, I did the Mike Francis Wall Classic. It was in, like, June or July of 2021. And then I did USA's a couple weeks later. So, I won the Mike Francis Wall Classic in my weight class. Went to USA's, got 4th place, and that was like a wake-up call for me, like, hey, okay, like, I'm not far away from turning pro, like, I belong. And then I got feedback immediately at that show from Tyler Manion, who's the vice president of the NPC and IFBB. Okay. So he just gave me feedback, hey, fix this, fix that, do North Americans. And did North Americans, I got 2nd place. And I was 3 shows that year, and, coming one spot away from getting my pro card at, my first year competing in bodybuilding. I'm like, okay, like, I'm where I need to be, like, just fine tune some things. Well, I went to the off season and I got invited to the Ghost Clash, and I was like, okay, well, the meet's in February. I'm like, the meet was in February. I'm like, okay, maybe I can, like, get some, like, training together and I can make this happen. So, like, when you're rebounding from a show in bodybuilding, like, you only have so much strength, essentially, as you start to, like, go into that rebound, and then it starts to come back as you start getting, heavier, stronger. You get more, like, surface area because you're gaining weight. And I started training for that meet a little bit too soon. It was, like, October, and I was, like, already, like, under a barbell. Okay. And, I didn't take in consideration that I went through 3 shows. Yeah. And peaked 3 times.
So, yeah, because correct me if I'm wrong, but, like, in bodybuilding, it's very different from powerlifting in the sense that, like, you look amazing on stage, but you're generally not in super amazing shape physically as far as, like, performance goes. Right? Like, your strength isn't there.
Yeah, like, the strength drops. Like, with bodybuilding, there's, like, a couple of different ways you can look at it. And this is something I always, like, tell my athletes is, like, we want to drive performance all year round. That's 100% important. Performance will drop off a little bit in a bodybuilding prep, but it shouldn't, like, plummet. If it plummets, that's a sign that you're losing muscle tissue more than likely, or you're over dieting. There's a factor that's off. There's something wrong. Like, if let's say you're dumbbell pressing the hundreds, by the end of a prep, let's say you do a 16-week prep, you still should be able to do the 65s or 70s for the same amount of reps you did the hundreds for. You shouldn't be going from 100 to 30-pound dumbbells. Then it's like, okay, hey, like, there's something off. And with bodybuilding, you have to obviously be, like, really cautious of, like, hey, like, I'm this many weeks out, I'm getting dry now, like, I'm starting to lose pretty much the last little bit of body fat I have. Like, I got to really critique, how I train just so I can be injury free. Now with myself, when I was going into that post-show rebound after North Americans, I was like, okay, hey, like, I'm going to push my strength, do the Ghost Clash, and try to put up, a top total raw knee sleeves at 198, or break the all-time world record at 198, which was 804. And it's John Hack, I think, just broke it, or he just beat it by, like, a pound, I think.
Okay.
So John has the record now, and at the time, I can't remember exactly who had it, but the record was, like, 6 years old. It had been standing for a while.
Yeah.
And
it wasn't Joe Sullivan, was it?
No. His was in 220. Okay. I think it was, like, a mere something. I forget his last name. But he had the all-time world record, and I was like, okay, well, we'll give it a shot. So, like, I started training. Like, I was squatting in the low 700s, getting in the mid 700s, and then we got to, like, my last heavy successful squat sleeves was 771. Okay. I was like, okay, I'm breaking the record, like, for sure. Like, this, like, once I peak fully, like, it will happen. So that moved really well. I got to my last heavy squat session, which was almost exactly 3 years ago. And I remember, like, before I had COVID, I didn't know it was COVID. I was just really, really sick. I thought it was food poisoning. So I was battling COVID, like dealing with that. And I was like, man, like, well, maybe I'm just like, you know, a little under the weather. I have like food poisoning. I'm going to push my squat session back by a few days. So I have some more time so I can just like rest and recover, get my body feeling better. Go into the squat session. I was not supposed to squat 800 pounds or over 800 pounds that day. It was like supposed to be like a last warm up, right? So warming up to like 759. It moves okay. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, let's go over 800. I need, if I'm going to take another big squat, I need to just do it now so I have time to recover and be good to go for the meet. So I went to 804, or it was 803, 1 pound under the all-time world record. Took it. As soon as I went down, everything felt normal. I literally get in the hole, and as soon as I tried to like come out of the hole, both my quads blew off. It was like boom, boom. Yeah. So like it was the right one, then the left one, and I just remember dumping the weight, and it was like such a quick like event. You don't really register like in your brain what happened.
Yeah.
And I'm on the ground, and the first thing I thought to myself was, I gotta get up and take that again. Like I don't care. I was like
I love
like the mindset wasn't like I'm injured. I was like, there's no way I'm injured. I'm getting up and taking this again. Like I just was like immediately thinking like, oh my gosh, I gotta like load this bar back up in the rack. Like I'm thinking like everything else I need to do, not like, hey, like you need to like get up and make sure you're okay.
I think Louis would be proud of that.
Yeah. And I remember my buddy was back spotting me, and he's just like, don't move. And I'm just like, it felt like someone knocked the air out of me. Like, that's how I felt. And I'm like, I'm all right. Like, you know, everyone get off me. Like, I'm okay. And I'm trying to get up, but I literally cannot pick my legs up because there's nothing attached to my kneecaps.
Yeah, because you can't like bend your leg
No,
out.
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Without a quad tendon, like that just can't happen at all. Yeah.
No, yeah. So like I'm like trying to stand up, but I can't pick my legs up, and I'm like dragging myself on the floor. Then I roll myself over, and I'm like looking down at my legs. I'm like, all right, something's up. Like I'm not able to stand up, and I'm like, all right, like I've definitely blown my quads off because there's nothing attached. Like my legs aren't moving.
Yeah.
But I can still move my toes and all that. So
did you feel pain from it at all? Was there like, or were you just on such a adrenaline rush that you weren't even registered?
No, you don't even feel it. Like
really?
It's just like an adrenaline rush. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they call the ambulance, and like I'm sitting up, the ambulance gets there, and I'm like, hey guys, like tore my quads, like I just need you to cut my knee sleeves off, like just help me get into like the bed and all that, and get me situated. And for me, it was just like, man, like I'm thinking in my head, like, okay, maybe they're not torn, maybe it's like a muscular tear. You know, I'm trying to be positive, but then also part of me is like, man, like you just made a terrible decision by trying to balance two sports, and you could have just chilled out, you know? So ended up going to the hospital, went to Ohio State, and like, just, it was one thing after another. They're like, oh, you tested positive for COVID. Oh, so now I'm in like.
You said this was 2021?
2020.
Oh, this was 2020.
No, 2021. Or no, 2022.
Oh, okay. So like we're still coming off the second wave of COVID.
Yeah.
It's still a big thing. People are pretty freaked out about.
Yeah, so I went, so after my bodybuilding show and those 3 shows right there towards like the summer and fall of 2021, my meet was February 2022. So I was in that meet prep, tore my quads like end of January 2022. And so like that was the whole thing, you know, with the COVID. And then I got surgery the next day to reattach my quad tendons, and like the worst pain ever of my life was the day after the surgery. And anyone who's had that same injury all tells me the same thing. They're like it will bring like straight tears to your eyes. The pain was that excruciating from when they drill through your kneecaps and re-anchor the tendon. And when all the pain meds wear off, it's just like unbearable. Damn. And
did they give you any sort of like nerve block or?
Yeah, they did, and that wore off. And then
that probably allowed you to at least like get up and walk pretty quickly, though, right? Or
yeah, the next day, the day after surgery, I was out of bed.
Yeah,
they had me moving. And anyone who gets an injury, I literally tell them like, hey, you need to get up and move.
Move as quickly as possible. I agree 1,000%.
Like, because one, it helps prevent atrophy. Like your GLUT4 receptors, like they will downregulate if you don't get up and move. So like, you know, atrophy can start to happen. So you want to avoid all that. Like, you want to stay moving. You want to, like, still, like, be able to push, like, nutrients to that area, some blood flow. So I always tell everyone, hey, get up and move, stand up, talk to your doctor, see what they have to say. But, like, your embraces and that the tendon's anchored. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Like, you're not
going to rip it. You're not going to re-tear them again.
No, it's not. No. And the thing is, too, when they re-anchor your tendon like that, you have, like, no range of motion at all. Mm-hmm. Like, you got to get it back, like, from ground zero. So, you know, you're not going to hurt yourself. You know, your legs are locked out straight, essentially. Yeah. So
yeah, because I've heard those, like, when you have a total tendon tear like that, it kind of, like, sucks the muscle up like a rubber band almost, and they have to, like, re-stretch it out.
Yeah.
And then you basically go to, like, zero mobility.
Yeah.
And have to get everything back.
Yeah, that's how it happened. Yeah, like, for me, it went from being, like, so I've seen people to where, like, the tendons, like, exploded. I've seen it to where, like, they've split in half, or, like, it rolls up. Like, there's a few different ways how this injury can look. And with mine, it just they're like, it's pretty much just clean ruptures. So it rolled up, so, like, they just pull it down and reattach it through your kneecap like that. But yeah, like, you have to re-stretch the whole tendon out. Yeah. And it was rough at first because, you know, like you said, you have to rely on someone else to help you. But for me, I mean, like, the way my brain works is not normal. So I was like, get these braces off me. Mm-hmm. So, like, I remember just sitting on the floor doing mobility drills literally every single day, all day long. As soon as I was cleared to, like, start bending my knee, I was like, okay, cool. Like, range of motion's coming back quick. And within, like, 4 weeks, I was at, like, 120 degrees range of motion.
Wow.
In both my legs.
That's impressive.
Yeah. So, like, I was, like, able to bend. Like, my knee's fine. And then it got to a point where, like, the stability was super hard for me. So, like, having this stability was, like, tough because you feel like you're balanced, but you're not truly balanced. Like, your knees, like, want to, like, kind of buckle on you a little bit. So, like, walking around my house was, like, real sketchy. Like, hold onto the walls and all that. Then once that got under control, I was just, like, okay, like, now I can, like, go about my day-to-day life. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But with that, it's, like, super easy, I can see, for people to fall into a really dark place. Like, for me, I definitely was, like, battling, like, the idea of, like, you know, that I just set back my bodybuilding career, like, years. Or, like, that I really just, like, you know, become my own worst enemy. You know what I mean? So, like, I had that kind of thought in my head for a while. And I tried, like, not to be mad at myself. But I was like, look, like, the only thing I can do is accept things for what they are. So I accepted, like, this is my situation. These are my circumstances. It's up to me to make the most of them right now and to change my own situation. So I was like, either I can sit around and feel bad for myself, or I can get up and, like, make something happen. Yeah. So
what do you think got you to be able to dive into that shift of mindset? Because that's an extremely challenging thing to be able to do, especially when, like you say, you were on the precipice of setting a world record in powerlifting, and shortly after that, getting your pro card in bodybuilding. Like, you were on the precipice of realizing these major dreams for yourself and in your life. And that's not an easy thing for people to do, to be able to go from that place of, like, what did I just do to myself? Like, is this going to jeopardize everything I dreamed of and chased and worked for? What do you think allowed you to be able to make that shift so quickly?
Yeah, for me, I just kind of looked at it as, like, okay, like, here's my life. Like, these are the things I want. I'm like, they're not going to happen unless I go after them and give everything I got to make, you know, the short-term goals happen, the long-term goals happen, and then, you know, just be successful. And I'm like, well, okay, I have to make myself literally go against the hardest things that I'm facing right now and, like, confront them and deal with them. Now, there were a few different things I did, like, in that time frame. Like, like you said, shifting your mindset, but I was able to sit down and learn new skills. So I was like, what right now, outside of bodybuilding and powerlifting, can make me more valuable? So, like, you know, learning things about training more, learning things about nutrition more, like, you know, continue to grow my faith, things like that. And, you know, I just had a lot of prayers going out for me, a lot of really good people in my corner. Like, I'm not saying I did all this alone, because I absolutely did not do this alone. Like, the amount of people that were there to help me and give me feedback, you know, Clayton was one of them. You know, he was there to help me a lot. And yeah,
because he just had the same injury almost a year before, right?
Yeah. So he had the same injury, you know, so he was there to help me a lot. And then you know, Brian Dobson and Branch Warren, list goes on of a lot of guys who suffer from that. And in the powerlifting community, you know, there were some other guys I knew who had the same injury that were able to give me like their advice and like what they did. But at the time, there wasn't a ton of people. Like over the last few years, it's unfortunately went up higher. So I've kind of been like giving that back and helping other people. But you know, I just knew like everything I wanted would happen like in God's timing. I'm like, it's not going to happen in my time because I want it right now. I want to be Mr. Olympia right now. I want to be, I want to break the all-time world record right now. Yeah. But it doesn't work that way. That's not how life works. So like, I accepted that. And I was like, if I continue to just put one foot forward and just accept these small wins that I'm getting, those will all add up. And in the grand scheme of things, like that was such a short time frame in my life. You know what I mean? But when you're going through something bad, it feels like it is literally months and years on end that you're just suffering. And I'm like, in all reality, like this is not going to be anything when I look at it. So like, and I kept that same attitude, you know, throughout the whole thing. And the biggest part was me facing the multiple surgeries. So I had 5 surgeries.
Were they all like back to back or were they spread out?
They were spread out, which was the toughest part because I would start rehabbing and training again. And I'm just like, dude, are you kidding me? Like, I'm not getting a break. So the second one was about 5-ish weeks post-surgery, 6-ish weeks around that. I was actually at the Arnold coaching. So I wanted to get my braces off so I could go to the Arnold coach because I had guys competing. And I remember showing up to Arnold out of my braces, and like people would see me like, dude, you're insane. Like, how are you out of your braces already? I was like, dude, I'm just happy to be here. Good to see you, man. Like I was just like on cloud 9, dude. Like I've been to every Arnold since I was 14. I'm like, I'm not missing it. Like I'm going. Like I don't care. So I was there and like just coaching, having a good time, and I just remember my right leg just kept swelling more and more and more throughout those days. I'm like, oh, well, maybe I was just on my feet a lot. And then I was like, okay, this pain is like bad. Like I feel like terrible. And I just remember after I wrapped one of my athlete's knees, I was like, hey man, I'm like, I gotta go get something to eat. I need to get back to my car, just like kind of like just decompress for a minute and like make sure I'm okay. And I just remember like looking at my leg. I was like, dude, like this is bad. Like this is definitely, I either re-ruptured something or like this is infection. And I called my surgeon and I told him what was going on. And he's like, all right, like come into the office like tomorrow immediately. So I go to the office and he looks at my leg and he aspirates it. So he like sprays it down with like lidocaine, and like that doesn't numb really anything. Yeah. And
shows that big needle in and draws it. Yep.
Yeah. Then it shows the needle in, and he just drew out like 30 cc's and then unscrewed the needle and unscrewed the syringe and just starts pushing out more and more fluid. And that pain was awful because it just was such a bad infection. Like it just felt like torture, like him draining into my knee like that. And I'm like, dude, this was so painful. I'm like, what do we do next? He's like, well, we're going to do surgery tomorrow because, like, this is bad. And I went in for, like, a whole new operation. So they cut my leg open, wash it out. Then they're like, oh, yeah, by the way, the sutures didn't hold. So I'm like, okay, great. So you've got to literally, like, redo my surgery almost. So go back to reattach the tendon. And then they washed my leg out, give me stitches. I go home, back in the brace because obviously like they gotta let the wound heal. Yeah. And they put a wound vac on my leg. So walk around with a wound vac in braces. And I was still training just upper body and doing like some glute hamstring stuff, you know, stuff that I could do. And I just remember like after that I was like, okay, cool, like well I should be good to go. Well, then again, my leg swells up again. So I'm like, dude, like what is going on? Like this can't. No, sorry. What happened was they went in and saw that I had an infection, the second surgery. The infection was there, so they couldn't redo my surgery. Okay. So then I had to go back in for the third surgery so they could actually redo the surgery. Went back in for that. The infection still wasn't gone, by the way, the whole time. So and I'm on antibiotics like this whole duration.
Yeah. Was it in your bone or was it in your muscle, like an osteomyelitis?
It was in the muscle.
Okay.
So Going for a third surgery, which was like a few weeks later. Got that done. I'm like thinking this was it. So they actually moved to the third surgery from the main hospital or OSU East to the Jamison Crane Center. So they did it there, and I was like, all right, well that's probably it. Like I'm good to go. Then I am about to do actual table talk for Dave Tate. So about to hop on there, do that. My leg is like literally, I'm like looking at my leg. I'm like, this is bad. Like this is not good. So went to the ER, and I always say this was a blessing in disguise. I'm just like, my surgeon was not in town. So they had 2 new surgeons on staff. And both those surgeons like were super in tune with what was going on. Looked at my leg and was like, all right, you're not going home. Like this, you're going to need surgery again. So they do surgery, but they brought in 2 new surgeons. So one of the doctors they brought in was really, really good. He was a huge fan of bodybuilding. Me and him like got along great. He's like, dude, like your incision looks bad. Like I'm just going to cut it off just so you don't have a ton of scar tissue. So he got rid of the incision there. Told me, he's like, look, like what we can do is like we're going to go in, clean everything out again. He's like, from the looks of it, like we'll probably just be able to like take out your hardware because your tendon's probably healed at this point. Because this is between the 3rd and 4th surgery, there was like I think like a couple months almost. So like it's been a while. Like so like the tendon's like re-healing. Like I'm running like peptides and everything like at this time, trying to do everything I can to heal my injury. And he's like, yeah, you know, we'll see how it goes. Well, like, the biggest part was I'm sitting there like we don't know like how bad this infection still is. Like yeah, they repaired it, but like, you know, like our number 1 goal is to save your life. Second goal is to save your leg. Third is everything else. So like that's like the steps we follow. So went to the surgery, and it went good. They're like, we're not sending you home. You're going to stay here because like the infection is so bad. Like we don't want you to go home and this get worse. So they just left my knee open, and they put a like a wound vac on it, but it was like pumping like a distilled bleach in my knee, like suctioning it out for all day long. And they would just fill this tank up like nonstop all day long, just with this distilled bleach. And they're like, yeah, you can get up and like walk around, like use the bathroom. So I was like in this tiny hospital room, like, dude, I'm going to lose my mind. So I just would get up and walk around the hallways and everything, and like I could just look down and like see like entire knee. And
were you on that surgical recovery floor at Wexner?
No, they put me at the OSU East Hospital.
Oh, East.
Again.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Dude, that place is even tinier.
Yeah. So like it's like a big tower. So like you're just walking around.
Yeah.
I'm just walking around like in circles all day.
Man, and the rooms are tiny. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a tough place to be.
Yeah. So I was there, and it was rough, and it was annoying because everyone started to know me. Like, oh man, what's up? How you been, dude? I'm like, look, I'm all about being friends, but I don't want you to be your friend because you know me from the hospital. Like,
yeah.
Like it was just crazy, man. And I remember I walked down to get an MRI. The MRI guy is like, dude, I've never had anyone walk down to get an MRI. Like usually they're wheelchair down. You're just like, hey, like let's do an MRI. Like I'm like, yeah, like I just want to like be out of here. You know what I mean? So what was cool though, like with the whole thing was how many MRIs I had, you could see the tendon just healing, like getting thicker and thicker and thicker and thicker. So I mean that's from of course training and recovery, all the stuff combined, and it was cool to witness that and just see how like the body just adapts, you know. Yeah. But yeah, it was just a whole event, and long story short, by the 5th surgery, they went back in, washed my knee out again, make sure they didn't miss anything at all, like any hardware, any pieces of sutures, whatever it was. And this is where like, you know, I was thankful that I can read blood work very, very well, you know, and I'm used to seeing all kinds of different indicators. And I remember before one of the surgeries, they aspirated my knee again, but they went through like up by like the quad. So it was like connective tissue. They were draining, and they put it in my chart like, hey, like we just aspirated his knee. And they put it in as from the knee joint, which it wasn't. It was from connective tissue. Because I was awake when they watched him do it. Long story short, they give me another infectious disease doctor. So the other infectious disease doctor is new to my case. She's like, oh yeah, you're not going home today. She's like, you're getting a PICC line, then you're going home. I'm like, although my surgeons told me I didn't need one. And I'm like,
what's she want to give you a PICC line for
the-
antibiotics?
yeah, for antibiotics for the infection. Well, I've been on vancomycin and on antibiotics for like days and weeks and months
all the
on
fun
end.
stuff. Yeah.
So my gut bacteria is like trashed.
Dead.
Like, dude,
yeah.
I
your
could
kidneys are in rough shape. Like,
yeah. Like my whole body.
Zosyn and vancomycin actually work together to destroy the kidneys.
Yeah.
They have a symbiotic relationship that destroys your kidneys.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy.
So they're just like yeah, you're going to get a PICC line and then you can go home. And like she's not understanding like, hey, like I'm like this is going to like stop me from training entirely. So like mentally I'm going to have to like deal with that again. And I'm like, the infection is not in my knee, it's in connective tissue. And she's like, no, it's not. Look here. I'm like, look at like we're looking at the same blood work here. It's not in my knee. This is a mistake. It was in the connective tissue. So she's like arguing with me, like not being respectful whatsoever. Yeah. And she's like, okay, cool. I'll prescribe you doxycycline. Go home. See you in 6 weeks. I said, okay. Went home, took it, came back. Infection was cleared. And I told her, I was like, if I would not have pointed this out, if it was a normal person in here getting the surgery, they would have went home, take with a PICC line, and could have got sepsis and died. So I'm like, I was just being aware and like trying to like make sure I made the right decision for myself. And she apologized, which was nice, but I'm just like, man, like I feel bad for some people who don't know any better because they just doing whatever, and taking whatever. So like me just being super involved in my own process and like understanding like how things work, like it saved me a lot more pain and unfortunate circumstances than what I faced already at that point.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%, and that's what I always urge people is, and thank God you had the experience and the insight you did to be able to look into that a little more deeply. But for you guys listening, even if you don't have that insight and experience, what I always like to say is there's a lot of phenomenal physicians, surgeons, providers out there that are experts in their field of medicine. And especially when they think they understand something about a situation, they can be a very strong expert in that field. But what you guys got to realize is that you will always be the leading expert in yourself. And I think a lot of times especially if you've been through a lot of intense medical procedures before, you develop this kind of gut intuition about your body, and never be afraid to listen to that intuition and to fight and advocate for that intuition, because that doctor, no matter how well they understand medicine, they will never understand what it's like to be in your body and in your situation. And, I had a situation recently actually with an OSU doctor at the James, and she sat on the phone call after my appointment arguing with me, trying to tell me what I was feeling, like about this myositis I've been battling for a long time now. And she was trying to explain to me how I felt. I was like, no, this is not what I'm feeling. And she's like, yes, it is. She's like, it's like right here in your history. I'm like, no. I'm like, you can't read something in a chart that may have been interpreted and reinterpreted by several providers. Because I bounced around a ton of clinics, but here she is arguing with me about it. And, I think from their perspective, it's tough because a lot of times just the way the healthcare system's built, all they have to go off of is chart data. A lot of times, when they've not talked to you a lot or known you very well, as it kind of was in your case. And so that's where we always have to really be able to develop this connection with ourselves and know when something doesn't feel right. And then to be able to have the confidence to be able to advocate for that, because as good as they are, they'll never be the expert in you. Like only we can be the experts in ourselves. And so I'm really glad you were able to kind of recognize that, not just from like your knowledge and experience with blood work, but just from within yourself. You were aware enough of the situation. You watched them draw it out of your connective tissue, and you had that knowledge and knowing of yourself to know that like that was not the intervention you needed. Because PICC lines are great and all, but you're right. Like, they come with a lot of risk too.
Yeah.
I almost died of sepsis. That's what very nearly killed me. And mine didn't start as a bloodstream infection from my port. It started from my GI tract, but it went into a bloodstream infection from my port. And, you know, there's no medical reason that I should still be alive today because of that, you know? So it's like, not only would it have impacted your training, but it's like, who knows how else that could have impacted your health in general.
Yeah. No, it was one of those things where it's like, hey, like, you know, I got to make a decision, and like, I want to go with my gut, like you said, and like, know, like, hey, like, based off everything I've went through and every possible antibiotic I've taken literally everything you could give me to get rid of this, and it wasn't going away. I'm like, it took you getting to the point realizing that the bacteria was clinging to the hardware in my knee. So them removing like the sutures and everything, taking it all out entirely, got rid of it. Luckily, it didn't trickle down into my actual bone. But
yeah, because osteomyelitis, that's a tough one to knock out. It's really tough.
So like, that's where I was just like, you know, I'm thankful to escape from that and gotten out of that. But, you know, if, you know, I wouldn't have stepped up and said something, then, you know, like I said, it could have been worse. And being able to get out of that situation was such a blessing. And looking back, you know, it taught me a lot about myself, and I was able to learn a lot. And then, of course, since then, like, everything I've accomplished, it's just like, man, like, if I can overcome that, I can overcome a lot of other stuff. And for other people going through the same injury, I've been able to, you know, really kind of just show them like the light, you know, in those dark moments, in that situation. And it's unfortunate because, you know, believe it or not, I get probably like 1 or 2 people every 2 weeks who blow their quads off who message me, and it's from squatting or some random accident sometimes, but most of the time it's from squatting, and whether it's free weight or on a Swift machine. And they'll just tell me how it happened, and I'll tell them, hey, this is what I did. Not saying I'm not recommending you do exactly what I did, but this is what worked for me, and this is what helped me. So, with that, it's just, you know, it's an injury that does take time, and it does take, you know, a lot of effort and energy to come back from. Because, you know, when you tear something off like that, your body does not know, like, that muscle works again. So you got to rebuild that connection back. You got to build that mind muscle connection. You got to build that ability to actually force blood flow into the area, like to be able to get a pump, like when you're training super hard, when you blow something off. So getting the blood flow back was something that took me some time. And then things I was aware of is when I train, like, how was the force output compared to left leg to right leg through the floor. So when I deadlift like conventional or squat, I would focus on like equal force output through the floor, really making sure that I'm able to feel the floor, making sure that I'm able to contract my quads like I need to. So all that stuff was things that I really just focused on and took time to, you know, emphasize. And there's a lot of things that I probably could have done that I didn't do. You know, I could have done more blood flow restriction. I could have done a lot of different things that would have made my process a little way more seamless. I just did what I knew worked and what was working, and based off the information I was given. But I mean, like, now there's some sources, and thankfully I've been able to be one of those sources and help some other people. But you get an injury like that, man, you're not going to be able to find any like rehab information online really at all. Yeah. No. And it's unfortunate because like anyone who does not have a network, like they're just kind of like, what do I do? Who do I call? Who do I talk to? So that's why I'm like, anyone who ever goes through that injury, I'm just like, man, 100% reach out. Like, here's my phone number. Anything way I can help, anything you need, let me know. And then people I also know in the fitness industry who've torn theirs since mine, you know, we've all been able to like come together and put out some cool information just to help other people. Yeah. So,
and that's great awesome. Because like the medical community isn't built to get you back. They're not focused on getting you back to bodybuilding and powerlifting and everything again. They're focused on getting you back to perform what they call the activities of daily living, which just freaking like it sickens me to hear that term anymore because of like how built they are for that. And they just say, oh, well, you can just not squat anymore. You can just not train anymore. You can just not do these. And a lot of people, there's some, you know, great people out there. I don't want to make it sound all bad and negative, but there's a lot of people who, like you say, don't understand that kind of mindset. Yeah. And they don't understand that that's not an option for you, you know, like you're not going to allow that to be an option. And so it really does kind of have to almost be this anecdotal approach to what works in a lot of these cases. That's what I had to do when I broke my foot last year. You know, people told me, the people were already telling me, like, you probably will never run again. This is an injury that's going to keep recurring for the rest of your life, and it may never heal fully. It may never heal correctly because of how little blood flow to that area there is. It just never heals right.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it was like 4 months after the injury, I was deadlifting 500 again in comp. You know,
Yeah.
I was running again 3 months after. So it's just like, as much as you got to follow this gut intuition as well, you got to keep an open mind to your own potential, and not just let yourself be limited by what these experts think you're going to be capable of.
Yeah.
And I think that's true whether it's an injury or training in life beyond all of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, again, you know, as we'll discuss, you're a perfect example of that.
Yeah. No, and I appreciate that, you know, and I tell people it's like, you know, where the mind goes, the body must follow. So, I mean, if you believe in yourself and you put the work in, and, you know, you just really understand that you can come back and you can be better, then it will happen. Yeah. But if you don't believe, like, no one else is going to believe in you. So, you know, like I said, you have to, like, really, like, see it within you. And if something's your goal, then it's your goal. And, like, you're not going to, you know, put that to the side for anything. So, like, when it comes to something like that, that's, you know, affecting your actual life, like, that is the priority. Like, if I don't come back from my quad injury and recover, then, like, one day when I have kids, I cannot be the dad I want to be. Or, like, am I able to, like, just live a normal life, you know? So you only got one set of legs. Like, I'm going to take care of them. I'm going to do what I got to do to come back. So that's how I viewed it. And, like, I knew I'd be back on stage. I knew I'd be back lifting heavy. I knew all those things would come back. It wasn't if, it was when. And, you know, I just kept doing the things that I could do, control what I could control. And, you know, it all came together.
Yeah. That's what we call that, having that unruly faith in your own potential.
Yeah.
So you work through that injury and you go through all those surgeries and the ups and downs and everything involved. And then finally you hit this moment where you can just have this up, like you can just go up and you can just dive back into these dreams, and you can work back into realizing these dreams. What does that process look like? You know, even after, like, the rehab and everything, how does, you know, having gone through this major injury, how does that affect kind of your direction and your vision and your whole process moving forward towards these dreams you have in life?
The first thing I thought to myself was, like, all right, I'm very grateful for everyone in my life. I'm very grateful for everything I have. I'm very, you know, appreciative of being able to go to the gym and all the things that are in my life. Not that I wasn't appreciative before, not that I wasn't grateful before, but it made me just emphasize that aspect of my life even more. So that was the first thing that came to my brain. And then secondly, it was like, okay, like, I'm blessed to, like, wake up today and I get to go to the gym. Like, I get to do cardio. I get to eat 6 meals a day. I get to do all these things. Like, it just made that more pronounced in my life to where, like, I was just able to be more present. So me being able to be more present made it to where I was able to push more towards those goals a little harder than what I was before. Because beforehand, it was more like, okay, like, I want to get there. I want this to happen, that's to happen. I was so focused on the destination, and then I became more focused on the journey now. So I can say I'm still working on that, even still to this day, to be more present, like, in every moment possible. Because, like, me turning pro, for example, last year in bodybuilding, like, it felt like just another show to me, you know? And everyone was like, oh my gosh, she should be so proud, like, and all this stuff. I'm like, dude, like, in my head, I already achieved this, but I had a setback. So, like in my head, a million times I envisioned myself winning that, like, without a doubt. So when it happened, it felt like it was supposed to happen. And then it was just like, okay, what's next? And I really, really tried not to think that for a little bit, like, over the course of the first few days after my show. I really just tried to, like, not think about anything else besides just enjoying that time, like, with my family, friends, and just the idea, like, hey, like, I just accomplished a massive goal of mine that I had since I was 11 years old. But then it's like, I can sit here and just be super happy with what I accomplished, or I can start to pursue my next goal, which is getting to Olympia. But everyone's like, oh man, like, you know, like, how's it feel? You should think this or feel that. I'm like, man, like, no, like, never once in my life have I stopped to just celebrate something like that. Like, yes, I'm very thankful and I'm very happy that it happened, but like, I got to keep moving. Like, we only have so much time in a day. We have only so much time in our life. Like, if I don't get to where I want to go, that's my fault, no one else's. So it's like an endless pursuit. And I feel like everyone has to have that no matter what they're trying to accomplish. Like, you can't just think, you know, I did good today, I'm just going to take a break. No, because that's when that other person who wants the same thing you want, that's when they're going to pass you. Yeah. So I'm just big on, like, giving everything you got towards whatever you're going after, and, like, just be relentless. Like, it cannot be 1 foot in, 1 foot out. It cannot be, you know, a situation where you have a million pots cooking at once. You know, it's like, find what you want to do, pursue those things, and just make time for them and give it all you got.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that kind of even ties back to what we chatted a little bit about in the beginning. We talked about, you know, the priority structure, but I love hearing you say that, and it is really awesome to hear, because I always wondered, like, what was the moment like when you finally hit that moment where you win the pro card?
Yeah.
And it's actually awesome to hear you give that perspective that you just gave, because that's why our main slogan, our motto, our message here is be impossible. So much more than it is the do the impossible.
Yeah.
Because those do the impossible moments, like that's what we would call an impossible moment right there. Like, there's so many people who would have said, no, it's impossible. You can't go back after a double quad tendon tear and then go get your pro card in bodybuilding.
Yeah.
Like there's people out there who would have said that, you know?
And there's people who told me that after I turned pro. They're like,
oh, I'm
there's
sure.
no way I thought you'd come back. I'm like, in my brain, I never thought for 1 second I wasn't coming back. Like, I literally never surfaced my mind. I thought, did I set myself back, or did I make this way more challenging on myself? Sure, but me turning pro was never something I doubted. Like, I knew in my heart it was going to happen, you know, and I would be better. And that's the thing I was most proud of, was that I was better turning pro than what I was when I almost turned pro in 2021. Like, I brought a better package. So I'm like, not only did I come back, but like, I came back better. Yeah. So now it's like, I'm within striking distance of where I need to be as like a pro. And like the feedback I got from judges and from people there and my coach, even, it was just like, you're not missing anything. Like, you just need size everywhere. Like, you just need to get bigger overall, and you'll be fine. And you'll be able to be competitive, which is now this year, and win a pro show. So that's the goal now. And I think, you know, me qualifying for Olympia would be a moment that would really kind of just make me pause for a second, because like, all right, like, it's here now, you know what I mean? But still, like, even this off season, I've had moments where I've been like, hey, like, what I want is in front of me now. Like, there's no more like, oh, I gotta get the pro card, I gotta, you know, qualify for a national level show again. There's none of that ever again. There's just now, like, qualify for Olympia. So it's like, and plus there's money on the line too now. So bodybuilding is expensive as is. So like, even if, you know, I win first place and get, let's say it's $30,000 payout, or it might only be, you know, $10,000 or whatever the case may be at a, you know, IFBB sanctioned show, it's like, it's better than getting nothing, of course, in NPC, where, you know, bodybuilding is still expensive no matter what. So it's nice to be able to have like that being funded now as an athlete, you know, when you're competing in the pro level shows.
Yeah, it takes a big stressor off the table and allows you to just, you know, be able to fuel from every aspect that it takes in bodybuilding, fuel that performance in that process at the highest level possible. And that's, you know, what we said is like, it was cool for me to hear you just describe it in that way, because it's like, I can tell you're very much a person who has fallen in love with the process of bodybuilding. And that's why we say be impossible. The idea of be impossible is build that version of yourself who you know will be capable of doing that impossible thing. Yeah. And that happens in the day-to-day, moment-to-moment, second to second of the process. Yeah. And I think to be at the level you are in bodybuilding, you don't even really have an option but to do that. Yeah. You know, because I've always had this like awe and this fascination. Like yeah, it's awesome. I love watching strength sports. I love watching like Eddie's 500 kilo deadlift.
Yeah,
you know, I
yeah.
love those intense moments, but I have this unbelievable awe and fascination for bodybuilders because it's almost like you can't just go out and same as like in football, you can't just go out and have this Hail Mary moment on a bodybuilding stage.
No.
That doesn't exist. Like
Yeah.
if you had a crappy prep, you're not going to just luck your way into winning a show.
No,
Like,
you're gonna look terrible
because the guy standing beside you had a flawless prep, you know? And so you can't just go out and make some crazy thing happen on the day of, if you didn't have a good prep. You know, it's like every bit of what you see on stage happened in the months and years beforehand, and that daily process. And so I have this huge fascination and all for it, because it's like that to me takes so much infinitely more daily discipline and mindset and drive and focus that you can't break on, you can't let up on, you can't cut corners on, or it'll show. So how do you like, because you're clearly so good at that process, and to us what we would describe as that process of being impossible, how have you found, or how have you come to build that? How have you developed that love for the process? How do you execute on a daily basis flawlessly in that manner?
I mean, I remind myself like why I'm doing it sometimes. You know, I'm like, hey, like, you know, I may not feel like eating that 6 meal, staying up a little later, or, you know, doing cardio after I train or fasted, whatever the case may be. But I'm like, everyone else trying to beat me is doing that. Like, if I don't win, it's my own fault, you know? And I just really think like, hey, there's another person training for the same show I'm training for in some situation that, you know, they're going to be there, whoever that may be, and they're training to beat me. And I think that I'm like, okay, like that immediately gets rid of any negative thought or self-doubt or laziness in my brain. So, you know, like, you have to destroy all laziness. And whatever that is, it might just be you not wanting to cook your food, prep your food. It might not be you wanting to go to the gym, do cardio, do mobility work. So I just tell myself I need to prioritize things I got to do to be a better athlete, because getting to Olympia is not just going to happen. You know, having a great pro debut is just not going to happen. It's going to happen because of my efforts and my actions on a daily basis. And most importantly, like, I love it. Like, I love the process. I love the sport. Like, there's nothing that's, you know, more enjoyable for me as an athlete. So I'm like, why am I going to not pour into what I love? Now, is it hard? Yeah. Like, eating as much food as I have to eat some days on training days, it's a lot. So I'm just like, am I full some days? Yeah. I do have an appetite some days. Yeah. There's days I don't have an appetite. Yeah. So, like, there are different kind of situations that are hard, but at the end of the day, you get to pick your version of what's hard, and whichever you pick, like, commit to that and pour into that. And, you know, when it gets difficult, that's what's going to make you better. That's what's going to challenge you. And most importantly, you learn about yourself. And anyone I coach, when they're in prep, whether it's their first prep or their 10th one, whatever the case is, I tell them, I'm like, look, like, no matter how hard it is, like, you have to understand, like, why you started it and remind yourself of that. Let's say you want a pizza, right? And of course it's not on your diet, and you almost cheated on your plan. Fast forward to your show, when you get second place and you didn't get first place, and the reason you lost that is because you went and ate pizza. In that moment, would you rather be first place, or would you rather be like, oh, I'll take second and eat the pizza? No, you want to get first place. So, like, remind yourself of how that moment would feel and how disappointed you'd be in yourself because you let yourself down.
Yeah, that's a really, dude, that's actually an awesome, like, mindset tool. You know, you think about, like, okay, if you think about your moment of winning your pro card, like, in that moment, you know, if you're struggling on a day or something, you can think, like, what if on the day of me winning my pro card, I had the option to have my pro card or have a pizza. Like you said, like there's no even, that's not even a question. Like, there's no pizza in the world that's as good as winning your pro card, you know? So it's so that's a really cool tool to be able to use in those moments where you're like struggling or you don't want to eat that 6 meals and things like that, because it's like nothing that you're struggling with in this moment here would even be a question on the day of, you know, when you're winning your pro card or winning a pro show or on the Olympia stage.
I'm like, man, like, you got to remember, like, why you did it and, like, how important is it to you? And, like, if it's a priority, you're going to make it happen. Mm-hmm. And the idea of me letting myself down, like, I would think about that in prep, and it would, like, make me sick to my stomach. And whatever I was doing that I did not want to be doing or having a hard time doing, like, that self-doubt or that negative thought in my brain would go away. Like, immediately. Yeah. Like, it would be days where I'd get up in the morning, and I remember I would pose every single morning fasted, like, starting, like, 10 weeks out. And every single week, it got harder and harder and harder. And I remember last prep, so I had to make weight at 176 pounds for middleweight in men's bodybuilding, because in NPC, you have actual weight classes in men's bodybuilding, versus in the IFBB, you don't have that. It's just open or 212.
Okay. So now was this in this most recent show you did, or the one before?
The most recent one.
Okay.
Yeah, so I had to get down to 176. And I just remember I was within like a few pounds of the weight cap, which I knew I was going to make weight once we manipulated food and water a little bit. And I just remember going to pose one day and being so tired. Like, I felt like I could just cry. I could just stand there and cry because I was that tired. But I was like, all right, this is where I get better. This is where, like, I really push. I'm like, because on stage, like, no one's going to be more conditioned than me. No one's going to have, you know, better posing than me. All the things that I'm doing now is going to set me apart. And it did. So, like, I conducted myself as a professional before I was one. And that's what got me my pro card, was doing all the small things that people don't do. Like, I'm not waiting to practice my posing 2 days before my show. No, I'm practicing 10 weeks out. You know, when cardio gets hard, like, I'm leaning into that hard. And, like, when that, like, last window, I tell people that the 5 weeks and less, it starts to get real tough. I'm like, this is what's going to separate you, especially the last couple weeks. Like, it's going to show who did the work and who didn't. So lean into that and really feel those moments, because in all reality, it's like, let's say you're 2 weeks out, you can do anything for 14 days. You know what I mean? So that's why I tell everyone, whatever you're doing, you can do it for that duration, and it's going to be worth it in the end. Like, you can go eat your junk food, do whatever you want. And I can tell you, like, firsthand, like, in prep, there would be some days where I had some random cravings, but none of it was that good after I won and had the meal I wanted or whatever I wanted. It's like, okay, I want to go back to eating my regular food. You know, it's like, in those moments when you're going through a prep and you're suffering and you're trying to get, you know, as lean as possible, you know, your brain kind of just plays some tricks on you here and there, like making it seem worse than what it really is. But it's just an opportunity to continue to get better and push yourself towards your goal.
Yeah, I love, dude. You had a line there that I just loved hearing. That you said, I became a professional before I got my pro card, in the sense of, like, you trained, you lived, you bodybuilded as a professional, and that's what allowed you to get your pro card. Yeah. You built that version of yourself. You built that professional version of yourself, and that's what gave you the pro card. And it shows that everything exists in that process. Whatever you're chasing in life, even if, whether it's bodybuilding, powerlifting, or something totally different, that law doesn't change. Everything exists in the process. Yeah. And that's what's going to allow you to go out and do that thing. And I think bodybuilding just happens to be this incredible example, because, like I say, there are no Hail Mary moments in bodybuilding. like you said, like, if you had, you know, skipped that last posing session, it might have made the difference, you know? Yeah. You know, and that's where you say, you can use those tools and say, like, this is where everyone else would quit. And it's just like what we talked about, that moment back when you squatted that 865 and you were at the bottom. Yeah. And you're like, you start to go up and there's this, like, pause, and it's like, you can't fail. Like, that's not an option. Like, this is a moment for you to set yourself apart and to make a name for yourself. and to show people the potential that can exist. And that was true at the bottom of that squat, and it's true at that moment where you got tears in your eyes, and you're so exhausted you don't want to pose, and but you got to, because that's the moment.
Yeah, and all that stuff paid off, and it all came together exactly how I planned, and I knew it would, and that's the same going forward. You know, whatever it is, you know, it all will pay off. And like for me in the off season right now, there's days, you know, I'm full and I don't feel like pushing the food some days and doing all the stuff that I need to do. But, you know, like I've said before, like, you're going to see who put the work in and who didn't. You know, you can't go back and add the tissue you didn't get from not eating the meals you're supposed to eat. Same as you obviously can't lose the body fat that you're supposed to lose when you go on stage from not putting the work that you're supposed to put in. So same thing, just different time frames, and they all go hand in hand, and it's all the small things. And even for powerlifting, you know, like, you're only going to be as strong as, you know, your work ethic allows you to be. Like, if you're not doing your mobility work, if you're not eating the food that you should be eating, if you're not doing all the things you need to do to make you a better lifter, like, you're going to limit yourself. And I mean, I've seen lifters who've literally been lifting for years and years and years, and they're not making any progress, but they keep making the same mistake over and over and over again. Like, you can't get in position to do your lift. Okay, well, fix your mobility. They don't fix their mobility. Oh, they're, you know, having issues getting to their top set because they're so exhausted from being out of shape. Okay, well, fix your diet so you can be in better shape so you can get to your top set, you know? So, like, Louis would always have people do GPP work, you know, stuff like that, and just doing a ton of mobility work as well to be able to just, you know, stay more functional, you know, like I mentioned. So there's all that stuff that goes hand in hand, and it's all the details and all the little things outside of the thing that makes you better. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And, you know, I think the other piece to all that too is, like, this is something Alex Hormozy talks about. I love this concept is, you know, there's different seasons to life.
Yeah.
And, like, right now you're in a position where you can chase this dream of being Mr. Olympia.
Yeah.
You know, you probably won't be in that same position 30 years from now.
No.
You know? Yeah. So it's like, but 30 years from now, you can probably go out and have a pizza if you want.
Yeah.
So it's like right now is the season where you have this unbelievable opportunity to pursue this dream and realize this dream that you've had, you know? And so it's like, you can think like, okay, right now I'm going to buckle down. I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
10, 20, 30, whatever year, however many years from now later in life, when you're pursuing other dreams, you can have that pizza, you know? So it's just like that. There will be a season that will come where you can enjoy that. It's not like you've got to give up that enjoyment forever. It's just a temporary thing.
And the thing is too, like, it's just food in that sense, like, and people who struggle with that when it comes to bodybuilding or dieting or whatever, I'm like, you can still go out and socialize and have a normal life. Like, but it doesn't have to be centered around food. Like, if you go out to dinner and, you know, let's say you're dieting for a bodybuilding contest or whatever it is, and you need to bring one of your meals, you're never going to look back at that moment and say, man, remember that time we had that pizza at that restaurant or at your house? That was such a great time. You're like, no, like, remember that conversation we had and the memories we made together? Like, that's what you're going to remember. So there's always more to it. And that's how I look at situations like that, or anything in general when, you know, trying to, you know, weigh the options.
Yeah. I love that perspective. So that kind of, I guess, takes us into some of the coaching aspects of what you do, because I imagine, you know, you've found successful ways to navigate these challenges yourself and keep yourself dedicated to this daily process. I imagine it's definitely got to be a different challenge, but I almost imagine sometimes it's got to be an even more difficult challenge to instill that in other people.
Yeah.
Especially, you know, in the clients that you coach now, because I know you've got powerlifting clients and you've got bodybuilding clients. So what is it like, you know, we've talked about you doing this process yourself. What is it like now on the flip side of that, kind of being able to simultaneously help others go through this process, keep them dedicated to this process, condition them perfectly through this process, and ultimately help them realize their own dreams and their own goals in that same discipline?
So I think everyone has a way that you can really, like, bring their best out of them, and you got to figure out how to do that. Some people who've been with me for years, I can just tell them how it is. Like, hey, like, you need to get together. I can really just kind of tear into them, but I know they want that. I'll use, for example, I have one female athlete I coach. She's a powerlifter. I remember when she first came to me, she told me, said, my last coach was a pushover and just was not someone who pushed me to be my best. So, okay, cool. I was like, well, I'm going to hold you accountable to the highest standard I can and really be on you and bring out the best in you. And that's worked great for her. And she's really just been able to get better and better and better every week. And she's hitting PRs she never thought she could hit. And that level of accountability is what some people need. Mm-hmm. Now, if someone comes to me and says, hey, my goal is to lose some body fat, maybe drop 30, 40 pounds, and just be overall more functional. Okay, cool. Well, I'm going to hold you to a standard, but I'm not going to hold you to the standard of someone who wants to become an IFBB Pro, So there's different standards I have to set for each person, and I have to be able to adapt to their situation to a degree. And I think as a coach, that's super important because ultimately, if you want to be able to truly help someone and leave a impact that's going to actually mean something, you have to be able to adapt to their situation and be able to really get them to where they want to go and accomplish their goals. Like we talked earlier, it's not my goals, it's your goals. Yeah. So that's how I really approach things and really try to get things, laid out with each person is okay, what really makes you excited? What do you like? What don't you like? And I always ask them a ton of questions and try to get as much feedback as I can to help them excel and become the athlete they need to be. So that's pretty much my approach with that. And again, if someone has something that is bothering them or something that's on their mind, I always tell them to tell me because the more detail and more feedback I have, even in a positive or negative case, it just makes me be able to help you that much more and really push you to a new level because the more data I have, the more information I have about you, any better it's going to help me help you. Mm-hmm. So,
dude, I love hearing you say that. And I would say that is the number one thing I appreciate the most about you as a coach is, and it kind of goes in line with how we were talking about with the different types of doctors. You never show up trying to push your goals onto other people.
Yeah.
You recognize that not everybody's dream is to be an IFBB pro necessarily. Yeah. I'm sure you probably have those clients that they love to bodybuild, they love to do it, but they're just kind of chasing their own growth and they may not even have professional dreams for it necessarily. But at the same time, you're not trying to impose your will on other people. No. And that I think that happened that cut through most clearly for me. I think it was last, or maybe it was even just a few days ago when, I've been, for whatever reason, since I had a great prep in the last meet, and then whatever reason after last meet, and I've got a lot of health challenges that I struggle with outside of this that are constantly fluctuating and back and forth. But for whatever reason, it's just felt like things are just not clicking like they were before, and I've been struggling a lot, on the squat and the deadlift, and things are just not moving right. And I've kind of been battling this point where I feel like I'm kind of getting my priorities out of line a little bit. Like I explained to you, where it's I feel like I'm forcing myself through every single training session to try to make these things happen. And it's causing detriment to my other priorities. The number one of which is my health and my well-being and my ability to be healthy enough to serve others to the maximum of my capacity, and I was just having all these tweaks, and I was getting beat down for days after training sessions, and for whatever reason I've just been in kind of a tough spot health wise. And so, dude, I was literally when I sent you that voice message explaining all this, explaining that, I was thinking about pushing back this 500-pound squat a little bit, allow myself to realign and refocus on my health again. Dude, I was sick. I was about half sick, sending you that message because I've got this thing inside of me where I never want to, I never want to feel like I'm just giving up or giving in,
Yeah.
And I also there's a big piece of me that I don't want to let you down either because I respect you so much, and just seeing how you pursue what you pursue. And so I was almost sick when I sent you that message because I was like, man, I don't want to let Jaden down on this.
No, and the thing is too is you got to do what's best for you, and I totally get that. And that's what I explained to you is what you're telling me makes sense, and you want to be the best you can be when you step on the platform. You know what I mean? And I always tell people no matter what your goal is, as long as you keep chipping away at it in some aspect, like you're doing all you can in that moment. And I'll use, for example, when I was trying to squat the all-time world record. I remember I was trying to get to it for the longest time, and it was like I was having hard training sessions, and it wasn't adding up. And the biggest thing I can compare it to, imagine you're at the beach, and you put your hand down in the sand, and you bring the sand up, and you squeeze it. Well, it's going to come out your hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you like hold it softly and gently and like take care of it, you're going to hold on to it. So that's how I treat like my training the same way, and like any goal I have. So like you have to just really like understand that and kind of just like go with that concept. And a lot of the time when things aren't lining up how you want them to, but you're doing what you can still. Mm-hmm. So like in your case, for example, like taking a step back for a second, letting your body get healthy and like kind of just like let everything just come together is going to only set you up for success later on when you do want to do the meet to squat 500 pounds. Because it's not if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen. Yeah. You know, and you know, you made a good decision because like you want to put yourself in the most optimal place to do that. And plus, you don't want to like risk injury. You don't want things to come up that could have been avoided by just taking a step back for a second and letting everything kind of come together.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what it was like. Such a relief to almost hear you immediately say like yeah, like that makes sense. Like I understand that. I get that because it allowed me to know that like okay, you understand like where I'm coming from a priority standpoint. Mm-hmm. Like I'm and I know that like I'm never going to be like a world class powerlifter, you know, and like that's fine with me. Like I'm never really competing against other people. I'm always competing against myself and trying to find like an impossible level of potential within myself. And so for me, it's like when I step on the platform, my goal isn't to necessarily hit this world record number. Yeah. It's always to hit this like new impossible level for myself. But even within that, like powerlifting is like fourth on my priority list, you know? So it's like, I had kind of gotten myself, I'd allowed myself to slip into this spot where I felt like I was forcing it through in this manner, that I was sacrificing some of my higher priorities to try to force myself to hit this one goal I had set for myself further down the list. And I think the biggest thing that got to me is like what you said, when I go onto the platform to do that, I want to be like, I don't want to just force myself into something I know I can do just for the sake of hitting that specific number, you know, like at this point, 500 isn't even really an impossible goal for me anymore. Cause it's like, I know that it's coming, you know? So it's like when I step on this platform now, you know, the plan is August, I'm thinking like 525, 530, 540. Like I'm thinking like 500 isn't even enough. And so I'm not even doing myself or anyone else a service if I force myself through just to hit this 500, but leave more on the table, you know, just because I wasn't healthy enough to go farther. So it's like, you know, I would rather take a step back, you know, push things back a little bit, reset and get myself healthy again, so that when I do go for that moment, I can put myself mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally in the most optimal spot possible to chase a number that I wouldn't even dream I could hit.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's the thing too, like, you know, you already have the mindset of like what's next. You know what I mean? Because you always want to go far and beyond to like what you're capable of or what you think you're capable of. You know, like 500 was a goal. Like you said, like now you know there's more there. There's more in the tank. There's more you can do. And like, you know, like you got to think, dude, like when it's all said and done, like I think you can be the strongest amputee ever, literally, in powerlifting. So like you have like the ability to like leave like an everlasting impact on powerlifting. So like it's cool to see that. It's cool to be a part of that. So like it makes me pumped for you.
Yeah.
So.
Dude, it's just fun to go out, and it's fun to be in this, like, to have the honor to be in this position where like there's so many amputees out there that don't even believe that they can go back in and lift weights, let alone go back in and perform at a really high level and you know, do crazy numbers. So it's so cool to be in this position now where it's like I get the opportunity to kind of show that to people, you know, like that's just a huge honor of my life. And yeah, you know, it's like that, you know, unfortunately open powerlifting doesn't have a amputee section to their world records. But as far as I know, the heaviest one that's ever been done in competition was Casey Mitchell And I always thought it was 479 was his top squat, and it was, but it was in reps.
Oh, okay.
And so I thought that was his raw squat. I didn't even realize till after the December comp when I was on there looking, his heaviest raw squat was 435.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm already, 30 some pounds over that, or I guess not quite, like 25 pounds, 27 pounds over that. And again, I'm never like, I've just never been drawn like to competition against other people. Like that's not something that really has ever fueled me.
Yeah.
I'm always about like, how can I beat my former self? You know? Like that 462 squat is now my like greatest competition, that I hit in December. But I'm not gonna lie, it is still cool to like see that like I'm not aware of an amputee who's ever squatted more raw in competition than what I've hit. Like, I'm not gonna lie, like that's a pretty cool feeling.
It's pretty awesome.
And, and so I know that like that can definitely be something that can drive people. And do you find like with your coaching clients that you have to kind of not just figure out, but also kind of leverage that piece of like what drives this individual athlete?
Yeah, like you got to find like what is going to really push someone to the next level. Like some people just have like that mindset where like whatever it takes. Like it's some people I coach where I just tell them this is what you need to do and they execute because they want to be the best they can be. They want to be the best in the world, whatever it is. There's just no way they're going off plan. Yeah, they're getting it done. And ultimately, I just want to coach people who want to be coached. I don't care what level you're at, as long as you like value getting better, value your goals, and like you want the guidance that I can provide you and the ability to allow me to help you, like that's it. Like I can't ask for anything more. But like you said, everyone has like that thing, what makes them really just tick and like get after it. And, the more and more I get to know someone, I can kind of like figure out what that is and like what really drives them. And a lot of it's like people's perspectives. Like the biggest thing I try to do is to shift some people's perspectives, because I'll have someone, let's say someone comes to me, they've never had a coach before and they hire me. So I have to show them the standard of what coaching is and like what it looks like. So I always want to set standard as high as I can, but at the same time, it's like, what is going to make this person truly get better and to not think like how they used to think. So like I'll use a client like that I've had, like when we first started, I remember he told me, he's like, I've been stuck, like not making progress for like the last like 3-4 years. Okay, cool. What have you been doing? Tells me what he's been doing. I said, okay, I'll put everything together and we'll get this thing rolling. Put together his plan, and he wasn't able to execute like a lot of it. And I'm like, well, why weren't you able to execute a lot of it? What were the problems? And he just wasn't used to some of the things that were on the plan in terms of like just preparing ahead of time, like, prepping your meals, doing your mobility work, all these different things. I'm like, these are the things that are going to make you progress. This is why you've been stuck for all these years, because you're not doing anything correctly. Not that necessarily what you're doing was all wrong, but this is why you've been stuck. I'm here to fix these things. So I'm like, the number one thing is I cannot want it more for you than what you want it for yourself. Like you have to want it. I'm like, I can put you in the best position possible to be successful. And I'm going to give you my insights if what you want me to do is going to help you or not, if you want it adjusted. But like, you just have to get up and do it. And that's it. As long as you do that, like you will make progress. And like if someone asks me, hey, how much rate of change do you think I'll see in my physique or in my strength in the next 3 months? No coach is going to have an idea of that. Yeah. They'll be like, if you put all the work in, you will get better. You will make progress. It comes down to how well you execute, and then we see how your body responds, and we adjust after that. But I'm like, as long as you're like literally putting in effort and just trying the best you can, that's all that matters. I don't expect you to be perfect. Like I'm not even perfect. I mess up some days where I'll, go fall off track a little bit, or something will happen where I get behind on a meal. Like stuff comes up. I'm like, but as long as you're trying to get better and like you are trying to have the most flawless day you can every day to the best degree possible, that's improvement. And I tell people there is no in between. You either get better or you get worse. So getting better could be, hey, I went up 5 pounds a day on my bench, or I went up 5 pounds a day on my dumbbell curl, or I drank all my water I was supposed to today, or, I took some time to really self-reflect and I got through a new chapter in my book. Or, I took 10 minutes out of my day today to start with prayer and like really just center myself with God. Like whatever it is, like there's always ways you can improve. And as long as you continue to like find those aspects and like look at things like that and find the areas you can better yourself in, like you're always going to be moving in the right direction. So
yeah, dude, I love that. And it's interesting that, you kind of bring up this piece that like, as a coach, you're just never going to know. Like, you can never give somebody an exact answer of like, you will grow this many pounds of muscle, or you will put this many pounds on your squat. But I will say, and I don't know if it's like down to how much experience you have or how disciplined you've been able to build yourself. I think you've got this ability to see things in athletes that they don't even see in themselves. And to me, that's been a really cool experience, because I had a couple coaches before you that were not like super serious coaching relationships. People, I respect and admire, and some of whom are really good friends of mine. But I'd never had like I'd never had a coach even close to your level before I got set up with you, and so it was just a massive honor to get to work with you, because, well, as we talked about earlier, like the numbers just speak for themselves. Like I would never have been nearly on the path that I am now in my performance if I hadn't got the opportunity to work with you. And I think the number one example that speaks to that is, and Clayton and I talk about this all the time, because we're both trained by you, and we both have similar, like sometimes we open up those programs and we see those numbers and we're like, oh man, I'm doing that this week. Like, are you sure about that?
Yeah.
But what's funny is that we've gotten used to it enough now that like we're just like, okay, like I don't know if I could do this, but Jaden says I could do this, so I'm gonna go out and do it.
Yeah.
And it's like, but we just joke about how you have this uncanny sense of like knowing how to push us like right to the edge. Exactly. And we're like, I don't even know how he knows I could do that. But the biggest piece, or the biggest time I've ever felt that was, and again, this is probably number 2 in all-time favorite lifts, even though it's not the heaviest lift I've ever done, but I think it was the last heavy session of this most recent prep for December. And I'd open it up, and I forget what the percentages were, but it came out to 443 for 3 reps. Mm-hmm. And at the time, 425 was my PR, my 1 rep max, which I just set in August. And I just remember calculating those numbers and seeing what I've got to do. And then I was like physically sick for like 2 days thinking about it. But dude, that's what I love about you as a coach, is because on my own, I would have never pushed myself to that level. Yeah. I would have never even like, and I like to even consider I like to think that I'm a pretty like mindset driven individual. I keep an open mind to my own potential, but I would have just never guessed that would even have been an option for me. Yeah. And so, I've been thinking about this squat session all week leading up to it. It's in the back of my mind. And I wake up that morning and I forget if I had to work that day or what was going on. For whatever reason, I had to go in the evening. Usually I squat in the morning. Yeah. And like all day, I'm like sick thinking about it. And fortunately, I had some really great people be able to go out and meet me and help keep me safe during that session with spotting and running the mono and stuff. But it was like because you had programmed that for me and you had set that for me, it allowed me to have that unruly faith in my own potential, like a belief that, well, if Jaden believes I can go out and do this, then like I'm going to go out and do it, or at least put everything I have into it. Yeah. And I had to go through some mental processes, like some things I know I can leverage that like I can't do every session, but I can do in like certain times when I need to. That was probably the second best I've ever been able to leverage that situation. But I just remember I remember there was a green plate in front of me on like the tree rack, and I'm just like, I unrack that weight, and at the top, just unracking it feels like more weight than I can even just hold. Yeah. Let alone squat for 3 reps. And then, I go down, and the whole time I just like go down and I kind of see nothing at the bottom, and then I come back up and I see that green plate.
Yeah.
I'm just like so focused on that green plate, and I see it at the top. I go down, see it again, and I remember coming up on that third time, and I see it for the third time. It's like I'm almost just there in disbelief that I even like did that.
Yeah.
But that's not like a testament to me as an athlete. It's a testament to you as a coach, because I would have never done that training session if you hadn't prescribed it to me. I would have never believed that it was even an option for me. But because I did that session, it allowed me to go into the actual meet with so much greater numbers in mind, and allowed me to actually have the confidence to be able to chase those numbers and to like sink that squat truly to the bottom and be able to come out and hit that squat.
Yeah.
And so I think that's something that probably your top level coaches are going to be able to do that, but not every coach can do that. To be able to know your athletes that well, that like you can see things in them that they don't even see in themselves. And I think that's a huge testament to your ability as a coach in that manner.
Yeah. And I always keep in mind like what's that person's goal, what do they want to do, what they want to accomplish. And I'm like, okay, like let's get as close as we can, to some of those things, and like really let's push the barrier and in a safe manner, and with other sessions taken into consideration, fatigue taken into consideration, all those things. So like in my mind, I'm like, okay, hey, like I know like this person can like really flip that switch and get it done. This person, hey, I know they may or may not be able to do that. Some days like they're going through like this portion of their prep and they feel like this. I always weigh all the factors and variables, but I tell someone like, hey, like I think you're capable of this. I think you can do this, and I want to see everyone be their best, and that's it. Yeah, if I can make someone, better than what they ever could imagine, then I'm doing my job. So that's the coolest part of it all. When people are like wowed by themselves, I'm like, dude, you did the work. I'm just telling you how to do it. You know what I mean? So
that's got to be an amazing feeling as a coach, though, to be able to see those moments when your athletes succeed.
Yeah.
And just to see that like pride they can take in themselves and in their work. And there's got to be a special part of that, like you as a coach, just when you can kind of see that from a third party perspective.
The coolest part is like, I get pumped up like more about like my athlete's success than like my own success. Like I turn pro, I'm just like, oh, okay, cool. And like, I have a guy like went overall at the show and like, I'm like going crazy. Like, I'm just like so pumped up. I'm like pumped. I'm like losing my mind. I'm like, it's super neat. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. And that's kind of that feeling like when you first got here and you got to meet my daughter and you got to ask like, what it's like to be a parent. It's like, it's that feeling.
Yeah.
Like it's that feeling times like a million. Like, dude, it's that same feeling, being able to instill that same process, that same drive, that same belief, whatever the thing is in someone else, and help them realize it to fruition, literally with a child, literally from day one. Man, that's so cool. And dude, it's an honor to have you on here to chat about all these things, your life and your performance as an athlete. But especially, now your performance as a coach. Yeah. And I know you've still got big dreams as an athlete, and you're not stepping away from that anytime soon. We know the Olympia is the next thing on your mind. And I remember this post you put up. I think it was literally like, it was either the day after or like 2 days after you won your pro card. And I think the caption said something. It was like, I think it was a picture of you lifting, and the caption said something like all I've got on my mind is the O, like the Olympia. Yeah. And dude, I love seeing that, because it's that what's next mentality.
And a lot of people, they'll think to themselves like, a lot of it comes down to self-belief. And like, I'm always realistic with myself, and I know I need to do, like, I know there's work that needs to be done still. I've had a really good off season. I put on a ton of size, the heaviest I've ever been. Like, everything's been going how I needed it to, and even plus some. So if I know I needed more time, I take more time off. That's fine. I take the whole year off if I got to. But it's like, if I'm in the ballpark to do I want to do and do I need to do and be in the mix to win, I'm going to do it. And that's how I've had to approach this. And, I kind of got onto myself at first because I was like, oh man, like my pro debut, if I could be top 3, that'd be great. I'm like, when in my life have I ever trained for second place?
Yeah.
Never. Ever. If you're going to do something, do it to win. And if you get second place, let the cards fall how they may fall. Roll with it, improve, come back better. But I'm like, I've always trained to win. I can't change that now and never will I. So like I told myself, like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this to win. And I'm going to have that mindset going into my first show. And then if I end up doing another one, same thing. But like the goal is Atlanta Pro and then Texas Pro. So like, or Texas and Atlanta. They're in first and second week of August this year. So still plenty of time. Still a few more months of off season and time just grow and continue to get bigger and stronger. So by then, I'll put on a good bit of stage weight and be much heavier and be able to stand next to guys who are, bigger and been in the game longer. So that's the goal. And, and people ask me all the time about powerlifting. They're like, "You ever do a meet again?" I'm like, at some point I'd like to, yeah. But I'm like, from a realistic standpoint, would I sacrifice my bodybuilding training to zone in on strength training for powerlifting right now? No, it wouldn't make any sense to do that. Nor like, would it be productive to like what my long-term goal is at the moment? Like, I started lifting. My goal was to, I told you earlier in the podcast, go to the NFL or be a pro bodybuilder. So pro bodybuilders happen. Getting to Olympia is like the ultimate goal. And, of course, winning and getting better and better. And that's right here. So I need to focus on that. The platform will be there in my 40s and 50s. Bodybuilding won't, more than likely. So I just got to be wise and be smart. I think I could do a meet in the off season and be okay to a degree. But also, there's no in between with me. It's all or nothing. So, like, I know my best squat spin, and me being heavier and stronger, I try to squat 900 plus pounds. So it's like, I got to be careful with what I do and how I do that. And I had a good talk with one of my friends the other day. She's had some all-time world records in powerlifting in the past. And, she swapped the bodybuilding. And she was telling me, hey, I've had such a hard time trying to balance my compound lifts with bodybuilding, and I was like, I agree, because I can go into the gym and I can do a deadlift session, and I'm going to need to deadlift mid 600s to the mid 700s to get done what I need to get done. And I'm going to be cooked after that. Like, that session is going to whoop me. And then all my rest of my sessions throughout the week are going to have some sort of negative impact from that one session. So I'm like, if I'm trying to optimize my sessions as much as possible, give the best intensity I can give, I'm going to need to pull back in some of these areas of my compound lifts, especially deadlift and squatting. So I've kind of pulled back a little bit, and it's allowed me to push my intensity harder in my other sessions. Still, I'm able to really push my intensity in those lower body sessions, but I'm not as cooked and the fatigue's not as high. I can go in and do, barbell RDLs, like 2 all-out hard top sets, for example, and go into the rest of my exercises and feel okay and be good the rest of the week. If I go in sumo and I'm pulling like heavy triples or something and doing all these other movements after, and I'm squatting heavy to that week, I'm hurt, So yeah. I'm just like, I want to optimize the training as much as I can and be as smart as I can to grow as much as I can and still drive performance. But the goal isn't to like hop on the platform in like 16 weeks, it's to be the better bodybuilder. And just being aware of that has been interesting this off season, because I've really taken time to like be more critical of myself with my training and picking, how I progress everything and how I push movements and then how I adjust. But it's just being, really in tune with your body and understanding what the goal is. And that Dave Tate always would get on to me before I got my pro card, and he still does a little bit now. But he'd always be like, remember what you're training for. Like, I would be deadlifting, and I was like, oh, should I go like 675 or 700? He's like, are they going to ask you this question when you're on stage? And I'm just like, no. And it kind of, we just would laugh about it, but it was the truth, So he would always just remind me, like, hey, like, make sure you're training for your sport and being safe. He's like, because the last thing I want to do is see you get hurt. So I kind of realized, like, this offseason, like last offseason, I was squatting like 700 pounds with like bands and chains and hitting PRs I never hit before I tore my quads. So it was cool to see that, but I was like, man, like this off season, like I'm here now. So like I've turned pro and everything's coming together. I'm like, I need to just be careful, so.
Yeah. That's awesome to hear that Dave has that perspective, and the like, even though he comes from more of a powerlifting background, he can still step outside of that and recognize that, like, that's not necessarily your primary goal right now.
No.
And that your primary goal is to be on stage. And I love that frame that he has, is like, is that going to be relevant on stage?
Yeah.
And it's really not. And I think it's kind of interesting too, because it goes back to what we talked about, how you can have that pizza is that thing that can be tempting to like lure you off the path.
Yeah.
Well, that pizza is very clearly wrong, for your goals. But there can also be things, and there's a lot of guys in the business world that talk about this. There can be a lot of things that are positive distractions, but are still distractions, like hitting, a heavier squat or a heavier deadlift could be something that may be like a positive thing, like a cool thing and like a good thing. And it's not going to it's not necessarily going to, it would maybe even, make you feel good as an athlete, but it still could be a distraction from what your true goal is.
Yeah, 100%.
And a lot of the business guys talk about that, and that's where it gets back to that season, or that thought of like seasons to your life, and that we need to generally, as a society, be better at monotasking, chasing one thing at the height of our potential and not letting anything else, even if it's a good thing, quote unquote, limit or potentially limit us from that thing. Yeah. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think it makes a lot of sense that you would, continue to just solely pursue bodybuilding at this time, because you've still got a lot of potential left to hit here, and you've got big dreams for it. And I think that's just incredible, man.
Yeah. And I appreciate it, and, powerlifting has always been something that's, been a passion of mine, and I'm thankful for it. And like I said, I'm not done, I got plenty of time, and, at some point I'll get on the platform at the right time, and I just got to decide when that would be and what would make the most sense. Trust me, there's some days and sessions where I just want to compete right now.
Yeah.
But, that's stupid, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So, I just got to continue to, weigh the options, like I've said, and, decide, what would be a good time frame to do that. But I enjoy lifting heavy still. I always will deadlift heavy, squat heavy here and there, bench heavy here and there. Just things that fit into my programming and make the most sense. So, but yeah.
I love that, man. One final thing I wanted to ask you about, because I've heard you mention a couple times, and we've had a lot of guests that this has always been a core part of their journey. You talk about your faith. Mm-hmm. What has that meant to you, not just throughout your life, but, as an athlete, as a coach? Where does that fall in your life, and how does it drive your performance in both of those areas?
Yeah, so like for me, like having God at like my center point of my life has been a staple for me. I mean, I could always be better, and I think as a Christian, I could always, live up to a higher standard that I have for myself. But I wouldn't be where I'm at today if it wasn't for my faith, because there's plenty of times like things got hard, things got rough, especially going through my quad tear. Like that was something that was definitely devastating, and it made me only get stronger in my faith, because if I didn't have my faith, I would not persevere through that moment or through those moments. And the amount of other people who prayed for me and the people that are really in my corner definitely reminded me, how strong I need to be in my faith, and understand like God could have been protecting me from something worse. I could have lost my leg, or I could have lost both legs. I could have died from that fall with the weight. There could have been something worse that could have happened to me. So I'm thankful none of that happened. And then along with that, it's like, everything that I prayed for like years ago, like I have today. So it makes me so thankful to be able to be where I am today, and to just have been able to receive those blessings. And that comes back to what I talked about again, like understanding God's timing. With his timing, it put me in a position to receive those blessings, and then now be a blessing to someone else in some way, in some fashion. Mm-hmm. And if I wanted all of it back then, and I would have had all of it now, like the stuff I have today, I wouldn't have been prepared to have those things. like I wouldn't have been able to utilize those blessings. I wouldn't have been able to get back to people. I wouldn't have known how to handle those things. But now, like, it's made me the man I am today, and like I can really just spread my faith and like just touch people in a positive way and just use the gospel as something that's been, you know, bigger than me. And I always tell people it's always bigger than me. And, you know, I believe as humans, we were here, all put here to help each other. And also, of course, like serve God. So like I'm able to like help more people, and I'm doing like his work. You know, it's not about me, it's about everyone else. And as a coach, that's something I always remind myself is like, hey, like I'm doing more than just, you know, what I love doing. I'm doing the right thing, and I'm helping people, and I'm giving back. And you know, it's always nice to see that and see how like I've left a huge impact on somebody and been able to touch them. But when life gets hard, you know, you always need your faith to lead on. You always need to understand what it means and how it can take you far in life. And it's just bigger than who I am. And it's very important. And like one of my favorite Bible verses is Matthew 9:29, you know, because of your faith, it will happen. And that's something like I really like reinforced to myself when I tore my quads, because like I knew I was going to turn pro in bodybuilding. I knew I was going to come back from that. I knew I was going to overcome all the adversity I faced, and in God's timing, it was going to happen. So like, you know, I've always just really referred back to that, and I still do today, you know, whenever I may be like going through a hard time or thinking about something, but like always being reassured, like everything's going to be okay is definitely super comforting and makes me even stronger in my faith day to day.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hearing you say that kind of reminds me of a theme that keeps coming up on this show. We talk about, you know, we've brought on some people that have faced some of life's greatest atrocities, things that like are a lot at times extremely difficult for us to even like sit down and hear or to talk about, you know. Yet I think in almost every case, each of those people would have said, or they would say, from where they are now in life with it, they would say that, you know, I'm grateful that happened to me. Yeah. They have gratitude for some of those atrocities. And I think that's really one of the biggest keys to life and to happiness, is to be able to, however you do it, to be able to create this mindset that you give meaning, or you create meaning for the worst things that have happened to you in life. And so it's like, it sounds like you've done that in a lot of ways with your quad tear, you know, where it's like you've found a lot of meaning in that through your faith, you know, because now you can give back to other people who have gone through the same thing, you know, and you can recognize that, you know, maybe that was part of God's timing or God's plan, or maybe it was just a way of him showing you that maybe that was his way of showing you of like, hey, I know you've got more potential in this one area. And, you know, it kind of nudged you into being able to focus solely on just bodybuilding and maybe realize an even higher potential in it because of that. Yeah.
And that's the thing too, is like, I remember like, you know, when I wanted bodybuilding so badly, and like now it's here, you know what I mean? So like, it was one of those things where like powerlifting brought me a lot of joy, a lot of opportunities. And, you know, now the door's open to where I can fully bodybuild and pursue that at my highest level. But it's just like one of those things too, you know, like when you're going through like a trial like that, you know, whether it's an injury, whether it's financially or whatever it could be you're going through in life, like you always will have your faith in the day. You're always going to have your why at the end of the day, and you're always going to have like your structure and foundation. And I think some people, when they're going through a hard time, you know, they always want to ask God, why me? Why am I going through this? Like, what did I do? You know, but understand, like, you're being prepared for something like great. Like, there are blessings on the other side of that adversity with your name on it, and you have to remind yourself of that. And, you know, like I said before, like that area, like that of your life that's tough, that you're going through, whether it's now, in the past, or future, or whatever it may be, it's just a very small time frame, you know. And like when you sit back and like look at that, it's going to be a small window. And not only that, there's going to be so many like messages that you just weren't able to see at that time because you're going through a ton of chaos, right? But it's always placed there for a specific reason. And like I said, you know, there's always messages there. There's always things that God's putting in your life and blessings he's putting in your life. And as I've gotten older, I've been able to see that more and more and more and more and more. How things I thought that were for me or things I wanted, you know, I really didn't need or didn't want. And, you know, being patient and just trusting, you know, his timing and understanding like life is going to come together as it needs to, you know, was the answer versus me trying to do it by myself. And when things get hard, we get angry and we want to do things by ourselves. Like we don't want any help. We want to just like, you know, try to figure things out. But I'm like, why would I do it by myself when I know I can have like God in my life and like I have, you know, unlimited help, you know, and I have that resource. And that's just been super uplifting and been able to keep me in such a good place mentally.
Yeah. I love that, man. All right. Well, dude, I appreciate your time being on here. I appreciate your message and everything you're giving to the world. And it's an honor to get to work with you as an athlete. And it's also an honor just to get to watch you pursue everything you're pursuing in life and the way that you're pursuing it. Like when I saw that post that you put up about like the only thing on my mind is the Olympia, I was like, when I saw that, I was like, there's no doubt in my mind he's going to step on that stage.
No, I appreciate it.
Like there's no doubt in my mind because I just see that because you already have that mindset just within days of achieving this already massive goal of winning your pro card. Because you have that mindset, it's like there's no doubt in my mind he's going to make this happen. And it's going to be such an awesome experience to get to witness. So
yeah, no, I appreciate it. Like that's the goal, you know, and you know, this year I'm going to give everything I got to get there. And, you know, I believe I've, you know, been able to check off a lot of boxes from last show to now. And, you know, it's been cool to see my body transform and just things fall into place. And, you know, I got a good group of people and, you know, I got a lot of good support. So I'm pumped and, you know, we'll see how the rest of this off season unfolds and then when my prep begins and how that goes. So, you know, I'm just excited, you know, just to compete. I mean, I love competing. I love the off season, but I love competing. Like I'm such a competitor. Like I'm like, man, like let me get on stage today. You know, like, start prep now. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah.
Absolutely.
Heck yeah, man. Awesome, brother. You got anything else?
No, this was incredible. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Oh yeah, of course, dude. Definitely.
Awesome. Well, Jaden, if people are looking to reach out to you or follow along with what you're doing, where's the best place they can reach you?
Yeah, so it's just on Instagram, TikTok as well, Facebook, YouTube. Mainly on Instagram a lot more than anything else, honestly. So it's just my name, so you just follow me, and you'll be good to go. And, you know, message me if you guys need anything, and I always want to just reach out and help as many people as I can.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you got some a couple really great brands you work with. Did you want to give them a quick shout out?
Oh, yeah, so I work with LeBron Nutrition. They're my supplement sponsor. I'll actually be out there next week doing some content stuff for them, so that'll be cool. And then my other sponsors, Wolfpack, so gym bags. They've been a huge help for me, you know, traveling and just carrying stuff with me. So thank you for both those companies and all they do. So
perfect. And we'll put their links and all your discount codes and stuff in the show notes too. So if you guys want to check out any of that stuff, look at the show notes there. We've got all our personal links. We'll throw all Jaden's stuff in there as well. And you definitely want to follow along to what he's doing because he's already achieved such great things, but he's continuing to be on the precipice of even more greatness to come, and it's going to be awesome watching this journey unfold and how everything plays out. So guys, you know, the number one thing we always ask you on every episode is if you got something out of this episode, which I know especially on this episode you guys did, please share it with anyone you know whom it might help, because at the end of the day, that is how we achieve our mission and our vision at Impossible Performance, is by spreading the word, spreading these messages, and spreading these mindsets of how to overcome and achieve in the face of life's greatest challenges. And you guys know we are also honored to work with some great companies on this show. I think, Jaden, you actually got to have your first Kinetic tonight.
Yeah.
What'd you think of it?
I thought it tastes pretty good.
Yeah,
tastes
good. It's pretty tasty.
Gives you like some cognitive focus.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
So,
I always notice that, and you know, there's people out there that say that like the brain can prefer ketones as an equal fuel source as it does carbohydrates. And what I love about it is like we can hit a Kinetic now, get some like mental focus and enhancement, but it's not like caffeine. Like, it's not going to wreck your sleep tonight at all.
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to impact that at all.
Yeah.
So it's a great product. We've been honored to work with them. Great company. And the dude has, the guy that runs this company, he's got such a vision for this company that he thinks that he can revolutionize ketones in the way that protein's been revolutionized in the last 10 years.
Oh, wow.
You know, you walk through a grocery store, like, you see protein on everything.
Yeah,
Whether it's false advertising or not, you see protein on
like
everything.
a junkie like supplement brand, like,
Yeah.
like 30 grams of protein is like amino spiked and just terrible.
Oh yeah. Well, the ones that crack me up is like, you walk through the cereal aisle and they're like, great source of protein.
Yeah, it's like 100 grams of sugar in the bottom. Yeah, I'm just like, yeah.
It's like 100 calories per gram of protein.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, he's wanting to revolutionize it in that same way, to where you walk through a grocery store and you just see ketones everywhere. He thinks it's going to be that powerful for human performance and development and health and wellness in the next 10 years. So yeah, big dreams, big visions. We love working with groups like that. But the other company we get to work with, that we've worked with since before the podcast was even a thing, was King and Fifth hats, which Austin and I are both wearing right now. And I've actually got a hat for you upstairs I almost forgot about, so I'll give you one of those. Just the greatest performance hat wear that I've ever found in my life. I love everything they do, the way they develop materials to not just like look good, but to also perform well, whether you're on a stage speaking, you're on a podcast, or you're in the gym crushing it. You guys definitely check out what King and Fifth is doing, because they've made good quality headwear accessible to everybody in every situation. And in that way, they're kind of revolutionizing their space as well. But guys, like I say, I hope you enjoyed this episode. We have been truly excited for this episode. I think since I talked to you about it way back at USPC Nationals when Clayton was performing. And it's just an honor to have you as a coach. It's an honor to know you personally. It's an honor to watch your journey and what you're doing. And I personally learned so much just from seeing, your daily process online of how you're just single focused, attacking every single one of your goals with such intense discipline. And it definitely inspires me to work harder and work better towards my own priorities and my own goals. So appreciate you being here, man. And guys, appreciate you listening to this episode. Appreciate you sharing it, because at Impossible Performance, we are striving to build a global culture of strength, fostering a spirit of growth in constant pursuit of the impossible. Thank you guys for listening. And as always, be impossible.